They say power reveals character, but humiliation tests it. When billionaire CEO Evelyn Cross publicly mocked a quiet gatekeeper in front of her entire executive team, she thought she knew exactly who he was: invisible, irrelevant, beneath her. She was wrong. What she didn't know was that the single father in a maintenance uniform had once kept nations alive under fire, that his calloused hands held skills her million-dollar engineers couldn't match, and that her cruelty would cost her everything she thought mattered. This is the story of how one brutal moment shattered two lives and rebuilt them into something neither expected. Stay until the end, hit that like button, and comment your city so I can see how far this story travels. The 73rd floor of Crosstech Tower smelled like ambition, leather, expensive coffee, and the faint metallic tang of panic that only billion-dollar disasters could produce. Evelyn Cross stood at the head of the obsidian conference table, her Louboutin heels clicking against Italian marble as she paced. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city sprawled beneath her like a conquered kingdom. Inside, her executive team sat rigid in their chairs, tablets glowing, faces pale. "Explain it again," Evelyn said, her voice cold enough to frost the glass. Slowly this time, as if I'm not the person who built this company from 23 employees to a $20 billion valuation. Marcus Chen, her chief technology officer, swallowed hard. His tie was loosened, the first sign of weakness she'd seen from him in 3 years. The server architecture is collapsing. We have redundancy protocols, but something's bypassing them. Every backup is failing simultaneously. If we can't stabilize the core systems he glanced at his watch. 4 hours and 17 minutes, we lose everything, the entire global launch. Client data across 47 countries, financial records. Everything. Everything, Evelyn repeated, letting the word hang in the air like a blade. And your team of elite engineers, the ones I pay 6 figures to prevent exactly this scenario, they're telling me what? That they can't fix it? We're trying everything. Trying. Evelyn's laugh was sharp. I don't pay for trying, Marcus. I pay for results. This launch represents 18 months of development and $300 million in capital investment. Our shareholders are expecting... I know what they're expecting, Marcus interrupted, then immediately regretted it when Evelyn's green eyes locked onto him like targeting lasers. I apologize. But ma'am, this isn't a normal failure. Someone with deep system knowledge designed this. It's not a bug. It's sabotage. The room went silent except for the hum of electronics and the distant sound of the city 73 stories below. Evelyn's jaw tightened. She'd built Crosstech on ruthlessness and precision. She'd outmaneuvered competitors, crushed hostile takeovers, and turned venture capitalists into disciples. She'd sacrificed relationships, sleep, and any pretense of softness to reach this height. And now some invisible enemy was trying to destroy it all. Find whoever did this, she said quietly, and find a way to stop it. I don't care if you have to burn the building down and rebuild the servers by hand. We launch in 4 hours. Ma'am, we've already called in every specialist we have access to. The conference room door opened. Everyone turned. Noah Mercer stood in the doorway, one hand still on the handle, the other holding a mop bucket. His Navy maintenance uniform was clean but worn, name patch stitched above the breast pocket. He was maybe 40, with close-cropped dark hair starting to gray at the temples, and the kind of quiet, weathered face that belonged to someone who'd learned to be invisible. I'm sorry to interrupt, Noah said, his voice low and even, but you've been in here for 3 hours, and I need to clean the... Get out! Evelyn snapped, without looking at him. Noah didn't move. Ma'am, building policy requires... Did I stutter? Evelyn turned to face him fully now, and several executives shifted uncomfortably in their seats. They'd seen this before. Evelyn Cross in full predator mode, and some unfortunate person in her crosshairs. I said get out. We're in the middle of a crisis that's worth more than you'll earn in 3 lifetimes. Your mop can wait. I understand. I'll come back. You'll come back when I tell you that you can come back. Evelyn's voice rose. Do you have any idea what's happening right now? Do you even understand what this company does? Noah's expression didn't change. I know you're under pressure, ma'am. I'll leave you to it. He started to back out of the room. Wait! The word came out sharp as a gunshot. Noah paused. Evelyn walked toward him slowly, heels echoing. Behind her, Marcus Chen made a small sound of warning that she ignored. When she was close enough to see the faint scar along Noah's jawline, she smiled, the kind of smile that had preceded a dozen corporate executions. "Actually, stay," she said. "Everyone, meet Noah Mercer, is it?" She glanced at his name patch. "Noah Mercer, our custodial staff. Noah probably doesn't know this, but our entire company is about to collapse because our top engineers can't solve a server crisis. Isn't that right, Noah? I'm not sure I should be Tell me, Noah, what do you think we should do? You must have an opinion. You clean these floors every night. You see the equipment. You probably overhear conversations." Evelyn's voice dripped with false sweetness. "Maybe you've picked up some technical knowledge? Maybe you can save us where our MIT and Stanford graduates have failed." The room was dead silent. Noah met her eyes for the first time, really met them, and something flickered in his expression, not anger, not embarrassment, something older and colder. "No, ma'am," he said quietly. "I don't think I can help you." "Of course you can't." Evelyn turned back to her team, dismissing him. "Go push your mop somewhere else. The adults are trying to save a company." She expected him to leave. They always left when she used that tone, humiliated, diminished, grateful to escape. Instead, Noah said, "But if I could, you couldn't afford me." The words dropped into the room like a stone into still water. Evelyn turned slowly. "Excuse me? You asked if I could help. I'm saying that even if I had the skills you're looking for, you couldn't afford my rate. Based on what I'm hearing, you'd need someone with military-grade cybersecurity experience, real-time system architecture knowledge under crisis conditions, and the ability to work without sleep under hostile circumstances. That's a specialized skill set, very expensive." He said it without arrogance, without challenge, just a simple statement of fact. For the first time in 3 years, Marcus Chen smiled. Evelyn's face flushed. "You're a janitor giving me market analysis?" "I'm someone who knows his worth," Noah said, "and I'm someone who needs to pick up his daughter from school in 90 minutes, so if you'll excuse me, how much?" The question came out before Evelyn could stop it. Noah paused. "Ma'am? You said I couldn't afford you. I'm asking your price. Hypothetically. If you actually could fix this, which we both know you can't, what would you charge?" The executives were staring now, a mixture of horror and fascination on their faces. Nobody talked to Evelyn Cross like this. Nobody. Noah was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Respect." "What?" "Respect," Noah repeated. "That's my rate. Not money. Not corporate promises, just basic human respect. But since that doesn't seem to be available here, I think we're done." He turned to leave. "Wait," Evelyn said, and this time there was something new in her voice, curiosity warring with rage. "You're serious? You actually think you could fix this?" "No, ma'am. I didn't say that." "But you implied—" "I implied that you couldn't afford me even if I could help. That's not the same thing as claiming I can." Noah's hand was on the door handle. "But just so you know, your problem isn't sabotage. It's cascade failure in your redundancy protocols triggered by a memory leak in your backup authentication system. Your team is trying to fix the symptoms instead of the disease. You're not going to solve it by throwing more engineers at the servers." He opened the door. Marcus Chen stood up so fast his chair rolled backward. "How the hell do you know that?" Noah looked at him. "Lucky guess. Good luck with your launch." "Stop." This time the command came from Marcus, not Evelyn. He crossed the room in 3 strides, pulling up his tablet. "Memory leak. Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ, he's right. Look at the authentication logs. There's a pattern. It's not bypassing the backups. It's poisoning them from the source. Every time we restore, we're reintroducing the error." The room exploded into motion. Engineers crowding around Marcus, voices rising, screens lighting up. Evelyn stood frozen, watching Noah. "Who are you?" she asked. "Someone who's about to be late picking up his daughter," Noah said. "Good night, ma'am." "Wait." Evelyn crossed the room, placed herself between Noah and the door. Up close, she could see details she'd missed before. The lean, efficient build under the uniform, The watchful stillness in his eyes, the faint chemical burns on his knuckles that spoke of some past life involving very different work. You diagnosed that in 30 seconds. I overheard enough to make an educated guess. Nobody makes that guess, not without serious background knowledge. Evelyn's mind was racing now, putting pieces together. Marcus, pull his file, HR records, background check, everything. Ma'am, I really don't think... Now, Marcus. Marcus tapped his tablet, pulling up the HR database. Mercer, Noah, hired 14 months ago through an outside contractor. Minimal background information. Previous employment listed as private security. References check out but are sparse. Private security, Evelyn repeated. She looked at Noah again, seeing him differently now. The way he stood, balanced, ready. The way his eyes tracked movement in the room. The careful control in every gesture. Military? Noah said nothing. You're military, or were. What branch? Ma'am, my daughter. Answer the question. Something hardened in Noah's expression. I don't work for you beyond my contracted custodial duties. I don't answer your questions beyond what my employment requires. And right now, my employment requires me to leave this room so you can handle your crisis. He moved toward the door. Evelyn didn't stop him this time, but she called after him. I'll pay you. Triple rate. No, 10 times your custodial salary, just for tonight. Fix this problem. Noah paused with his hand on the door. I told you my rate. Respect, yes. Fine. You have it. Do I? Noah looked back at her, and there was something devastating in the simplicity of the question. Because 5 minutes ago you called me someone who couldn't understand what your company does. You dismissed me in front of your team. You used me as a prop to make yourself feel powerful. That's not respect, Ms. Cross. That's cruelty disguised as leadership. The words hit like physical blows. So thank you, Noah continued quietly. But no, my daughter's school concert starts at 7. She's singing a solo. I've been practicing with her for 3 weeks. I'm not going to miss that for any amount of money, and I'm definitely not going to miss it to bail out someone who thinks basic human decency is beneath her. He left. The door closed with a soft click. The room stayed silent for exactly 10 seconds. Then chaos erupted. Engineers shouting theories, executives demanding action, Marcus trying to coordinate 3 teams simultaneously while tracking down Noah's full employment history. But Evelyn stood motionless, staring at the closed door. Nobody had ever spoken to her like that. Nobody had ever walked away. And nobody, ever, had diagnosed a cascade failure in her multi-billion-dollar system architecture by overhearing 30 seconds of panicked executive conversation. Ma'am, Marcus appeared at her elbow. I pulled deeper. Noah Mercer wasn't just military. He was Spec Ops, Cyber Warfare Division, classified deployments. He has clearance levels that took me 3 backdoor searches just to confirm exist. This isn't some guy who learned tech as a hobby. This is someone who kept battlefield command systems operational under active fire. Evelyn's stomach dropped. And he's working as a janitor. Single father, Marcus read from his screen. Sole custody of a 9-year-old daughter. Wife died 4 years ago. He left active service shortly after. No arrests, no red flags. He just disappeared into civilian life. Found this job through a contractor who probably never looked past his references. Find him, Evelyn said. Ma'am? Find him. Apologize. Offer him whatever he wants. We need him. Marcus hesitated. He was pretty clear about... I don't care what he was clear about. This company is going to collapse if we can't stabilize those servers. And apparently the one person in this building who actually understands the problem is mopping floors on the 42nd level. So find him, Marcus. Convince him. Do whatever you have to do. And if he says no? Evelyn finally looked away from the door. Then we lose everything. Noah Mercer walked through the stairwell. He always took the stairs, old habit from years of keeping his conditioning sharp, and tried to let the anger drain out of his shoulders. It wouldn't help. Anger never helped. Sarah needed him calm and present tonight, not bitter about some billionaire CEO's casual cruelty. He'd learned to be invisible. It was safer that way. After Melissa died, after he'd left the service and taken Sarah out of the life that came with military deployments and classified operations, He'd wanted simplicity, wanted to be present, wanted to be the father Melissa would have wanted him to be. So he'd taken a job that let him work nights when Sarah was sleeping, that paid enough to cover their small apartment and her school expenses, that didn't ask questions about the gaps in his resume or why someone with his clearance levels was applying to push a mop. Most days, it worked. Most days, he was just another invisible worker in a building full of people too important to notice him. But some days, days like today, he remembered what it felt like to be someone else, someone whose opinion mattered, someone whose skills meant something. His phone buzzed. Text from Sarah's school. Reminder, winter concert tonight at 7 p.m. Please arrive by 6:45 for seating. Noah smiled despite everything. Sarah had been nervous about her solo for weeks. They'd practiced every night, her clear voice filling their tiny apartment, growing stronger and more confident. He wouldn't miss it for anything. He pushed through the stairwell door on 42, grabbed his custodial cart, and, "Mr. Mercer." Noah turned. Marcus Chen stood in the hallway, tablet in hand, looking exhausted and desperate. "We need to talk. I'm off the clock in 15 minutes. I know, and I know you have somewhere to be, but please, just hear me out." Marcus ran a hand through his hair. "That diagnosis you gave? Memory leak and the backup authentication? You were right. We're tracking it now. But it's worse than we thought. The leak has been introducing errors for weeks. Every backup we have is compromised. We're not just fighting a system failure, we're fighting systematic corruption of our entire data architecture." "That's unfortunate," Noah said carefully, "but it's not my problem." "It could be, if you wanted it to be." Marcus stepped closer. "Look, I pulled your file. I know who you are, or who you were. Captain Noah Mercer, 4th Cyber Battalion, multiple combat deployments, commendations I don't even have clearance to read about. You didn't just overhear that problem. You lived that problem. You've dealt with exactly this scenario under conditions that would make our current crisis look like a practice drill." Noah said nothing. "My boss was out of line up there," Marcus continued. "Way out of line. She knows it. I know it. But she's also right that we're in serious trouble. And you're right that we can't afford you, not if we're being honest about what your skills are actually worth. But I'm asking anyway. Not because of the company. Because there are 47,000 employees worldwide who are going to lose their jobs if this launch fails. There are millions of users who are going to lose data they can't get back. There are—" "Stop," Noah said quietly. "I know the stakes. I always know the stakes." "Then help us." Noah looked at his watch. 6:07 p.m. Sarah's concert was at 7. It was a 15-minute drive to her school, plus time to park, find his seat. If he left right now, he'd be cutting it close. If he stayed— "I can't," he said. "I made a promise." "To your daughter," Marcus said. "I know. I read that in your file too, and I respect that. I have 2 kids myself. I get it." "Then you understand why the answer is no." "I do. But I'm asking anyway." Marcus pulled out his phone, tapped the screen, and held it up. It showed a video call, someone in the office holding the phone toward a group of people working frantically at servers, faces illuminated by screen glow, exhaustion and fear visible even through the small screen. "These are good people, Mr. Mercer. Brilliant people. They're doing everything they know how to do. It's not enough." Noah watched the screen for a long moment, saw the chaos he recognized from a dozen deployments. Intelligent people pushed beyond their capacity, making mistakes born of panic, fighting a battle they didn't have the training to win. "The memory leak," he said. "It's in the authentication tokens, but that's not the root cause. Check your certificate renewal protocols. Someone introduced a backdoor during a routine security update, probably 6, maybe 8 weeks ago. It's designed to degrade slowly so you wouldn't notice until it was too late. You need to isolate the certificate authority, flush the entire authentication chain, and rebuild from your pre-compromised backup. You have 72 hours of clean backup before the leak started. Use that as your foundation." Marcus was typing frantically. "Isolate the certificate authority, flush authentication chain, rebuild from which backup specifically?" "October 14th, Noah said, "before your last security audit. That's your clean snapshot. Everything after that is suspect." "Jesus," Marcus looked up. "You can see all this from a 30-second conversation?" "I can see the pattern. I've seen it before. in different systems under different circumstances. The execution is clever, but the methodology is familiar. Noah checked his watch again. 6:11. That should get your team started. If they work fast and don't make mistakes, they might stabilize the core systems before the launch window closes. Might isn't good enough. It's what you've got. Mr. Mercer, Noah, please come upstairs, walk us through it. Make sure we do it right. I told you why I can't. Then let me offer something else. Marcus lowered his voice. What if I told you that your daughter's school concert doesn't start until 7:30, not 7? That the message you got was wrong. I checked with the school after I pulled your file. You have more time than you think. Noah stared at him. You called Sarah's school? I called a lot of places in the last 20 minutes. Marcus didn't look apologetic. And yes, that was invasive and probably inappropriate, but I'm trying to save 47,000 jobs, and you're the only person I've met tonight who actually understands what's happening. So yes, I made some calls. And yes, you have time. Not much, but enough. Noah's jaw tightened. The anger was back, hot and familiar. You had no right. I know, I'm sorry. But I'm also not sorry, because if I hadn't made those calls, you'd be leaving right now thinking you were about to miss your daughter's concert when you actually have almost 90 minutes, which means you could spare 30 minutes upstairs, help us avoid complete disaster, and still make it to that school with time to spare. For a long moment, Noah didn't move. Then he said, if I miss that concert because of this, there isn't enough money in your company to pay what I'll cost you. Are we clear? Crystal. And I work alone. I don't want your engineers second-guessing me or asking questions. I don't want managers hovering. I fix it my way, and everyone else stays out of my path. Done. And when this is over, Ms. Cross apologizes. Publicly, in front of the same team she humiliated me in front of. Marcus hesitated. I can't promise that. Evelyn doesn't apologize. It's kind of her thing. Then she'll learn a new thing, Noah said, because that's my rate, not money. Respect. Starting with an acknowledgement that what she did up there was wrong. I'll do my best. Your best isn't good enough. Get me her word or I walk. Marcus pulled out his phone, typed rapidly, and waited. 10 seconds later, it buzzed. He read the screen, then looked up. She agrees. Fix this, and she'll apologize in front of the full executive team. In writing. Are you kidding? Do I look like I'm kidding? Marcus sighed, typed again, and waited. Another buzz. Fine. In writing. Formal apology, delivered in front of witnesses. Is there anything else, or can we actually start saving this company now? Noah grabbed his cart, pushed it into the utility closet, and stripped off his maintenance uniform. Underneath, he wore a plain black t-shirt and tactical pants. Old habits died hard. Take me to the server room. And Marcus? Yeah? If your boss tries that condescending act again while I'm working, I'm gone. I don't care if the building is actively on fire. Understood? Understood. They took the elevator up in silence. Noah used the time to center himself, pushing away the anger and the resentment and focusing on the problem. It was what he'd been trained to do. Compartmentalize, prioritize, execute. Feelings could wait. The mission came first, except his mission wasn't supposed to be corporate server failures anymore. His mission was supposed to be getting Sarah to her concert on time, making sure she felt confident before her solo, being present and steady in her life the way Melissa would have wanted. But as the elevator climbed, Noah felt the old reflexes clicking into place, the calm that came from knowing exactly what needed to be done, the clarity that came from having a problem he actually knew how to solve. Maybe, he thought, he could do both. The elevator doors opened on 73. Evelyn Cross stood waiting in the hallway. She'd removed her suit jacket. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a severe ponytail, and her face was pale but composed. When she saw Noah, something flickered in her expression. Embarrassment, maybe, or anger at being forced to negotiate. Mr. Mercer, she said, thank you for coming back. I haven't agreed to anything yet, Noah said. Marcus told me you'd apologize for what happened downstairs. I will. After you fix the problem. Before. Now. Evelyn's eyes narrowed. You're negotiating timing on an apology while my company collapses? I'm establishing the terms of our agreement before I start work. If you can't manage basic respect before I've done anything for you, there's no reason to believe you'll manage it after. They stood there, locked in mutual assessment. Then Evelyn said, "You're right. What I did downstairs was inappropriate and cruel. You didn't deserve to be spoken to that way. I apologize." "Say it like you mean it." "Excuse me?" "You're reading lines," Noah said. "You're checking a box so you can get what you want, but you don't actually think you were wrong. You just think you got caught. So either apologize like you actually understand why what you did was harmful, or I'm walking." Marcus made a sound like a small animal dying. Evelyn's face flushed red. "You have no idea what I know exactly what you think," Noah interrupted. "You think I'm leverage, a piece you can move around your board to solve your problem. You think that if you say the right words and make the right promises, you can manipulate me into doing what you want. But here's the thing, Ms. Cross. I've dealt with people like you before. People who think rank and money and power make them untouchable. And I've learned that the only way to deal with people like you is to establish boundaries immediately and enforce them without compromise." He turned toward the elevator. "Good luck with your launch." "Wait." Evelyn's voice was different now, quieter, strained. "Please." Noah stopped. "You're right," Evelyn said. "About all of it. I was cruel because I was scared, and I took that fear out on you because you were convenient and couldn't fight back. I humiliated you to feel powerful because my actual power, my company, my achievement, everything I've built was falling apart, and I couldn't control it. That was wrong. I'm sorry." She said it looking directly at him, no hedging, no conditions. Noah held her gaze for a long moment, then he nodded once. "Show me the servers." The relief on Marcus's face was almost comical. They walked through the executive level to a secure door marked Authorized Personnel Only. Marcus swiped his badge, pressed his thumb to a biometric scanner, and the door clicked open to reveal a stairwell leading up. "Server room is on 74, climate-controlled, redundant power, all the high-end security. After what you said about the authentication protocols, we've been trying to isolate the certificate authority, but we keep hitting cascade failures. Every time we think we've contained it, another system goes critical." "Because you're treating symptoms," Noah said as they climbed. "The authentication leak is poisoning your systems, but your engineers are trained to fix individual failures. They're not thinking in terms of systematic compromise." "And you are?" "I had to. In combat situations, you don't get second chances. If your command and control networks go down during an operation, people die. So you learn to think in terms of systemic integrity, total architecture, and cascade prevention. You learn to see the pattern underneath the chaos." They emerged into the server room, a cathedral of technology, thousands of blinking lights and humming processors arranged in perfect rows. Noah could hear the desperation before he saw it. Engineers shouting coordinates, technicians running between equipment racks, someone crying quietly in the corner. Marcus whistled sharply. "Listen up. This is Noah Mercer. For the next however long this takes, he's in charge. You do what he says, when he says it, without question. Clear?" A few engineers looked up, skeptical. One, a young woman with purple hair and exhausted eyes, said, "Who the hell is Noah Mercer?" "Someone who diagnosed our cascade failure in 30 seconds, Marcus said. "Someone who knows more about system architecture under crisis conditions than anyone in this room. And someone who's got 75 minutes before he has to leave whether we're done or not, so I suggest we stop asking questions and start following instructions." Noah walked to the nearest terminal, called up the system architecture, and started analyzing the authentication chains. It was worse than he'd thought. The backdoor had been sophisticated, designed by someone who understood both the technical systems and the human patterns of the engineers who maintained them. They'd introduced the vulnerability during a routine security update, hidden it inside legitimate certificate renewals, and built-in degradation timers that would ensure the failure happened during the highest stakes moment possible. "This wasn't random," Noah said. "This was targeted sabotage by someone with intimate knowledge of your systems." Evelyn, who'd followed them up, went very still. "What?" "Whoever did this knew your launch schedule, knew your backup protocols, knew exactly where to inject the failure to cause maximum damage." Noah pulled up authentication logs, traced the certificate chain, and found the insertion point. There. October 16th, 2:37 a.m. Someone with administrative access uploaded a compromised security patch disguised as a routine update. It's been degrading your systems ever since. October 16th, Marcus breathed. That was our quarterly security audit. We had 6 external contractors working that night along with our internal team. Then you've got 6 suspects, Noah said. But that's your problem to solve later. Right now, I need every engineer in this room to stop what they're doing and listen carefully. We're going to flush the entire authentication architecture and rebuild from your October 14th backup. That means every system goes offline simultaneously for approximately 8 minutes. Every connected device will lose connection. Every active process will terminate. It's going to look catastrophic. Do not panic. Do not try to fix individual failures. Let the system come back up on its own once the new authentication chain is established. 8 minutes, Evelyn said. Your shareholders are going to lose everything if we don't do this. Noah cut her off. So make your choice. 8 minutes of controlled chaos or total collapse in the next 90 minutes. Evelyn looked at Marcus. Marcus looked at Noah. Then she nodded. Do it. Noah turned back to the terminal. Everyone clear this area except for... He scanned the room. You. He pointed at the young woman with purple hair. What's your name? Kira. Kira, you look like you actually understand what you're looking at. Everyone else out. I need space to work. The engineers filed out reluctantly, leaving just Noah, Kira, Marcus, and Evelyn in the vast server room. What do you need from me? Kira asked. I need you to monitor secondary systems while I handle the authentication rebuild. When I give the signal, you'll initiate the October 14th restore on your terminal while I flush the corrupted certificates on mine. We have to hit the execute commands within 3 seconds of each other, or the systems will reject the new authentication chain and will crash everything. 3 seconds? Kira repeated. That's not a lot of margin. No, Noah agreed. It's not. Which is why I need you to be absolutely certain you can do this. If you hesitate, if you second guess, if you freeze, we lose. Kira met his eyes. I can do it. Good. Noah checked his watch. 6:47. Sarah's concert started at 7:30. He had 43 minutes. Ms. Cross, you and Marcus need to prepare your teams for the blackout. Make sure everyone knows this is intentional. The last thing we need is some well-meaning engineer trying to override the shutdown. Evelyn hesitated. Can I ask you something first? Quickly. Why did you come back? You could have walked away. You made your point. Why risk missing your daughter's concert to save a company owned by someone who humiliated you? Noah didn't look up from the terminal. Because Marcus was right. 47,000 people losing their jobs isn't your problem, it's theirs. And they don't deserve to pay the price for your cruelty or whoever sabotaged your systems. Sometimes you help people not because they deserve it, but because the alternative is worse. He typed a series of commands, isolating the certificate authority from the main network. Now please clear the room so I can work. Evelyn and Marcus left. Kira stayed at her terminal, fingers poised over the keyboard, watching Noah with an expression somewhere between terror and fascination. You really did this in combat? She asked. Different systems, same principles. Though usually there were fewer billion-dollar stakes and more immediate physical danger. Sounds awful. It had its moments. Noah pulled up the backup restoration protocols, verified the October 14th snapshot was clean, and began building the command sequence that would flush and replace the entire authentication architecture. You ready? No, Kira said honestly, but I'll do it anyway. That's the only readiness that matters. Noah's fingers moved across the keyboard in practiced patterns. Muscle memory from hundreds of similar operations, different equipment, same fundamental architecture. He could feel the system responding, the compromised protocols isolating themselves as he cut off their access to core functions. It was like surgery, removing infected tissue while keeping the patient alive. Prepare for execute on my mark, Noah said. 3, 2, 1, mark. They hit their keys simultaneously. For exactly 3 seconds, nothing happened. Then every light in the server room went red. Every screen went black. The ambient hum of thousands of processors dropped to silence. Kira made a small sound of panic. It's not. Wait, Noah said quietly. Count to 8. Don't touch anything. They counted together, watching the dead screens. 8 seconds felt like 8 hours. Then, somewhere deep in the server racks, something clicked. A single light turned green, then another, then 10, then 100. The screens flickered back to life, authentication protocols rebuilding themselves, systems coming online in cascading waves. Noah watched the progress bars tracking the rebuild. Come on, come on. 90 seconds later, the last system authenticated. Every light was green. Kira let out a breath that was half laugh, half sob. Holy shit. Holy shit, it worked. Check the authentication chains, Noah said. Make sure they're clean. Kira's fingers flew over her keyboard. All green. Authentication stable. Certificate authority responding normally. Backup protocols verified clean. Jesus Christ, we did it. Noah allowed himself exactly 3 seconds of satisfaction. Then he checked his watch. 7:02. He had 28 minutes to make it across town. Marcus burst back into the server room, tablet in hand, eyes wide. Primary systems are back online, secondary systems responding. Data integrity checks they're all passing. You actually did it. Kira helped, Noah said, already moving toward the door. Make sure you pay her more, and check your system access logs for October 16th. Whoever planted that back door needs to be identified before they try again. Wait, where are you going? I told you, my daughter's concert. But we need to debrief, document what you did, make sure you have Kira. She understands what we did. She can explain it to your team. Noah was at the door now, moving with the purposeful speed of someone who'd calculated timing down to the second. And Ms. Cross has my contact information if there are follow-up questions. Evelyn appeared in the doorway, blocking his path. Mr. Mercer, we need to discuss compensation. What you just did saved. We already discussed my rate, Noah said. You apologized. That was the deal. But surely you'll accept. I don't want your money, Ms. Cross. I want to watch my daughter sing. Now please move. She moved. Noah walked past her, through the executive level, to the elevator. He hit the button for the ground floor, and as the doors began to close, he heard Evelyn call out, "Thank you." He didn't respond. The doors closed. The elevator descended in silence. 73 floors to freedom. At ground level, Noah exited through the main lobby, marble and glass and the carefully cultivated perfection of corporate success, and burst into the parking garage at a run. His car was old, reliable, paid off. He'd bought it specifically because it was invisible, the kind of vehicle nobody looked at twice. He made it to Sarah's school at 7:24, found a parking space at 7:26. Walked into the auditorium at 7:28, just as the lights were dimming for the performance. Sarah saw him from backstage. He could see her peeking through the curtain, scanning the audience. When their eyes met, her entire face lit up with relief and joy. She waved, barely containing her excitement. Noah waved back, found his seat, and for the first time in hours, allowed himself to breathe. Whatever happened at Crosstech Tower didn't matter anymore. What mattered was here, now, watching his daughter prepare to sing in front of her whole school. What mattered was keeping the promise. The curtain rose. Sarah walked onto the stage with 20 other fourth graders, her choir dress neat, her hair carefully braided, her hands clasped nervously in front of her. The music started, and Sarah sang, her voice clear and strong, exactly the way they'd practiced. Noah felt tears burning in his eyes, gratitude and pride and the bittersweet joy of knowing Melissa should have been here too, should have heard this, should have seen their daughter becoming exactly the person they'd hoped she'd become. But she wasn't here. So Noah sat in that dark auditorium and held the moment for both of them, recording it in memory the way he'd learned to record everything important now, fully, completely, with absolute presence. When Sarah hit the final note of her solo, the applause was thunderous. She found Noah's eyes again in the crowd, searching for approval. He gave her a thumbs up, and she grinned so wide it looked like her face might split. After the concert, standing outside the school in the cool December evening, Sarah ran up and threw her arms around his waist. "Did you see? Did you hear? I didn't mess up even once." "You were perfect," Noah said, hugging her back. "Absolutely perfect. Your mom would have been so proud. I wish she could have been here. Me too, sweetheart. Me too. They walked to the car hand in hand, Sarah chattering about the performance, about her friends, about the cookies the PTA had brought for afterward. Normal things, safe things, the things that mattered. Noah's phone buzzed in his pocket. He ignored it. It buzzed again and again. Sarah looked up. Is that work? Probably, but it's not important. You can check it. I don't mind. Noah hesitated, then pulled out his phone. 7 messages from Marcus, 3 from Evelyn directly, and 1 from a number he didn't recognize. He opened the last one first. Mr. Mercer, this is Kira from tonight. Just wanted to say thank you for trusting me in there. That was the coolest thing I've ever been part of. Also, Ms. Cross wants you to call her. I think she's freaking out about something. Anyway, thanks again. You made me feel like I actually knew what I was doing. Noah smiled despite himself, then opened Marcus's messages. You need to call Evelyn. Now. Seriously, this is important. Mr. Mercer, we have a situation. The sabotage was more extensive than we thought. We need your help. Are you there? Please respond. Evelyn is offering a formal contract. Name your terms. Whatever you want. This is urgent. Please call. If we don't hear from you in the next hour, we're going to have to make some difficult decisions about security protocols and personnel. Your input could change everything. Noah stared at the messages. Then he looked at Sarah, happily humming her concert song in the passenger seat. And he made a choice. He turned off his phone. Everything okay, Dad? Sarah asked. Everything's fine, Noah said. How about we stop for ice cream on the way home? I think someone deserves a celebration. Really? Even though it's a school night? Even though it's a school night. Sarah's squeal of delight echoed through the car. Noah drove toward their favorite ice cream shop, leaving Crosstech Tower and its crises and its desperate messages behind him in the dark. Whatever was happening there would still be happening tomorrow. It would keep happening until someone dealt with the fundamental problem. Not the technical sabotage, but the culture that had allowed it. The arrogance that had led Evelyn Cross to humiliate someone she thought couldn't fight back. The system that had made everyone in that building think power mattered more than competence, and money mattered more than respect. Noah had spent enough of his life fighting other people's battles. Tonight, he was exactly where he was supposed to be, with his daughter, keeping his promise. Everything else could wait. The ice cream melted faster than Sarah could eat it, dripping down her fingers in sticky rivulets as she told Noah about every detail of the concert, who sang off key, who forgot their lines, how Mrs. Patterson had given her an extra-long hug afterward. Noah listened with the kind of attention he'd once reserved for mission briefings, nodding at all the right moments, asking questions that made Sarah light up with the joy of being truly heard. By the time they got home to their small apartment on the 3rd floor of a building that had seen better decades, it was nearly 9 o'clock. Sarah was yawning between sentences, the adrenaline of performance giving way to exhaustion. Noah helped her wash the sticky ice cream from her hands, supervised teeth brushing, and tucked her into bed with the same care he'd once used to maintain million-dollar equipment under combat conditions. Dad? Sarah's voice was sleepy, muffled by her pillow. Are you happy? The question caught Noah off guard. Of course I am. Why would you ask that? I don't know. Sometimes you look sad, like you're thinking about Mom. Noah sat on the edge of her bed, smoothing her hair back from her forehead. I do think about Mom, every day. But that doesn't mean I'm not happy. You make me happy, sweetheart, every single day. Even when I mess up my math homework? Especially then, because it means I get to help you figure it out. He kissed her forehead. Get some sleep. School tomorrow. Love you, Dad. Love you too. Noah turned off her light, left her door cracked open the way she liked it, and walked to the kitchen. Their apartment was small, 2 bedrooms, a bathroom that barely fit 1 person, a kitchen-living room combination that served as everything else. But it was clean, safe, and theirs. No deployment schedules, no classified briefings, no wondering if today would be the day something went catastrophically wrong. He made coffee because sleep wasn't coming anytime soon and turned his phone back on. 23 messages. Marcus, Evelyn, Kira, and now several numbers he didn't recognize. He read through them chronologically, watching the crisis unfold in digital fragments. From Marcus at 8:47 p.m., We found the source, one of our contractors, guy named David Brennan. He's been selling corporate secrets for 18 months. Your fix exposed his access patterns. Security is handling it, but we need you to review the full system architecture. There could be other vulnerabilities we haven't found. From Evelyn at 9:15 p.m. Mr. Mercer, I understand you have priorities outside this company, but what you did tonight was extraordinary. I'm prepared to offer you a position as our chief security consultant at whatever salary you name. Please call me. From Kira at 9:33 p.m. Hey, so things got weird after you left. Ms. Cross has been asking everyone questions about you. I think she's trying to understand why you just walked away. Anyway, thought you should know. From an unknown number at 9:58 p.m. This is David Brennan. You ruined 18 months of work tonight. I know who you are, Noah Mercer. I know where you live. That was a mistake. Noah read the last message 3 times. Then he stood, walked to Sarah's room, and checked that her window was locked. Checked the front door. Checked the fire escape access. Old habits, old protocols, the same rituals he'd performed in a dozen different cities when the work had been dangerous and the enemies real. He texted Marcus. Received a threat from David Brennan. Forward this to your security team and local police, taking precautions. The response came back in seconds. Jesus Christ. We have him in custody, but he made bail an hour ago. I'm calling SFPD now. Do you need protection? Noah considered it. Protection meant official involvement. It meant questions about his background, possibly triggering reviews of his classified service record. It meant making Sarah's life complicated when it was finally blessedly simple. No. But keep me informed. If he makes contact again, I want to know immediately. He set the phone down, poured his coffee, and stood at the kitchen window looking out at the city lights. This was why he'd left the service. This was why he'd taken a job pushing a mop in a building full of people who looked through him like he was invisible. Because the alternative was this: threats, danger, the constant calculation of risk and response. But as he stood there, coffee cooling in his hands, Noah felt something else stirring beneath the concern. Something he hadn't felt in 4 years. The old clarity. The sense of purpose that came from having a problem that actually mattered. Skills that were actually useful. A fight that was actually worth fighting. He'd spent 4 years being invisible by choice. Maybe it was time to stop. His phone rang. Evelyn Cross, according to the caller ID. Noah almost didn't answer, but something about the late hour, the persistence, the memory of her voice when she'd actually apologized, not the corporate performance, but the real moment of honesty, made him pick up. Miss Cross, Mr. Mercer, thank you for answering. Her voice was tight with stress. I assume you've seen the messages about David Brennan. I have. Our security team is coordinating with police. He won't get anywhere near you or your daughter. You have my word on that. Your word doesn't mean much against someone with 18 months of corporate secrets and a grudge, Noah said, but I appreciate the sentiment. It's not sentiment, it's responsibility. You helped us tonight. That makes what happens to you my concern. She paused. Can we meet? Tomorrow morning? There are things I need to discuss with you that shouldn't happen over the phone. I work tomorrow night. Sarah has school. Before school then. 7 a.m. There's a coffee shop called Meridian 3 blocks from your apartment. I checked. It opens at 6:30. Noah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. You know where I live. I know a lot of things now that I didn't know 12 hours ago, including that you have every reason not to trust me, but I'm asking you to anyway. 7 a.m., Mr. Mercer. Please. She hung up before he could respond. Noah stood in his kitchen, phone in hand, and tried to remember the last time someone had unsettled him this completely. Evelyn Cross was dangerous in ways that had nothing to do with physical threats. She was smart, ruthless, and clearly accustomed to getting what she wanted. The fact that she'd researched his address, his daughter's schedule, his entire life in the span of a few hours said everything about how she operated. But it also said she was serious. And if David Brennan was actually a threat, Noah needed to know what Crosstech's security team had found. He texted back, 7 a.m., don't be late. The response was immediate, I'm never late. Noah finished his coffee, checked the locks one more time, and tried to sleep. It didn't work. By 4 a.m., he gave up, went for a run in the pre-dawn darkness, came back and showered, got Sarah up and ready for school, and walked her to the bus stop by 6:45. She was still half asleep, leaning against his side as they waited. "You okay, Dad? You seem tense." "Just didn't sleep well. Concert excitement." Sarah smiled up at him. "Best night ever." "Yeah," Noah agreed. "It really was." The bus came. Sarah climbed aboard, waved from her window seat, and disappeared into traffic. Noah walked 3 blocks to Meridian Coffee, a small place with exposed brick walls and the kind of earnest artisanal atmosphere that charged $7 for a cup of coffee but made it well enough that people paid anyway. Evelyn Cross sat at a corner table, laptop open, phone face down beside it. She'd traded last night's power suit for dark jeans and a gray sweater, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. Without the corporate armor, she looked younger, maybe late 30s instead of the ageless perfection of professional success. She saw Noah, closed her laptop, and gestured to the seat across from her. "Thank you for coming. What can I get you?" "Black coffee. Large." Evelyn flagged down a server, ordered for both of them, and waited until the drinks arrived before speaking. "David Brennan worked for us for 18 months as a security contractor. He had high-level access to our systems, which he used to steal proprietary data and sell it to 3 of our competitors. Your fix last night exposed his access patterns because the authentication rebuild required him to reconnect through protocols he'd been avoiding. Our security team tracked him, built a case, and had him arrested by midnight." "And then he made bail and threatened me," Noah said. "Yes, which shouldn't have been possible. The judge set bail at $2 million, but someone paid it within an hour." Evelyn slid a folder across the table. "These are the financial records our forensic team pulled. The money came from an offshore account registered to a shell company. We're still tracing ownership, but it's sophisticated. Whoever's backing Brennan has resources." Noah opened the folder, scanned the documents. The money trail was indeed complex. Multiple transfers through different jurisdictions, each one legally structured to obscure the source. This isn't just corporate espionage. This is state-level intelligence work. That's what our consultants said, which is why I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Evelyn leaned forward. "What exactly did you do in the military?" "Classified?" "I've read your file. The unclassified parts. 4th Cyber Battalion, multiple combat deployments, commendations you're not allowed to talk about. But there are gaps, months where your service record is completely redacted, operations that officially never happened." She held his gaze. "I need to know if what you did last night exposed you to danger beyond an angry contractor." Noah was quiet for a long moment. The coffee shop hummed around them, espresso machines hissing, quiet conversations, the morning ritual of a city waking up. Normal life. The kind of life he'd built for Sarah. "What I did in the military," he said carefully, "was keep critical systems operational in hostile environments. Sometimes those environments were combat zones. Sometimes they were places that officially don't exist. I can't tell you more than that, but you made enemies. Everyone makes enemies if they're good at their job. That's not an answer. It's the only answer you're getting, Ms. Cross." Noah closed the folder. "But to address your actual concern, no, I don't think David Brennan's backers are connected to my past. This is about your company's secrets, not mine. The threat he made was opportunistic. He's angry and scared and lashing out. Men like that rarely follow through." "Rarely isn't never." "No, it's not. Which is why I've already taken precautions." Noah drank his coffee. It was good, probably worth $7. "Is that all you wanted to discuss? Because I need to get to a few things before Sarah's home from school." "No, that's not all." Evelyn pulled out her phone, tapped the screen, and turned it toward him. "This is a contract, chief security consultant position. You'd have full authority over our digital infrastructure, access to any resources you need, and a mandate to prevent what happened last night from ever happening again. The salary is $250,000 annually, with full benefits, flexible schedule, and—" "No," Noah said. "You haven't even read the terms." "Don't need to. I'm not interested." Evelyn's jaw tightened. "Why not? You clearly have the skills. You proved that last night. And the money would be irrelevant if it meant missing another one of Sarah's concerts, or her soccer games, or just being there when she needs me." Noah set down his coffee cup. "I appreciate the offer, but I left that life for a reason. I'm not going back." "This isn't that life. This is a civilian position with a tech company." with state-level intelligence threats, contractors who make bail through offshore accounts, and the kind of pressure that turns regular people into David Brennans. Noah shook his head. You're not offering me a job, Ms. Cross. You're offering me a return to the thing I sacrificed everything to escape. So thank you, but no. He stood to leave. What if I could guarantee Sarah's safety? Evelyn said quickly. What if part of the package included private security, monitored residence, everything you'd need to ensure she's protected? Noah turned back slowly. You're offering to put surveillance on my daughter? I'm offering to make sure David Brennan's threats stay threats. To make sure whoever is backing him knows that touching you or your family would be the most expensive mistake they ever made. By making us prisoners in our own lives. By surrounding Sarah with security she doesn't need and shouldn't have to think about. Noah's voice was very quiet, very controlled. My daughter has already lost her mother. I've spent 4 years trying to give her a normal childhood despite that. I'm not going to trade her sense of safety for your company's peace of mind. Then what do you want? Evelyn stood too, frustration breaking through her professional composure. You have skills that could save us millions. You could prevent future breaches, protect 47,000 employees, make a real difference. But instead, you'd rather push a mop and pretend you're not capable of more. I'm capable of being Sarah's father, Noah said. That's more important than anything your company needs from me. That's not... I didn't mean... Evelyn stopped, visibly recalibrating. I'm sorry, that came out wrong. No, it came out honest. You think what I'm doing now is beneath me. You think I'm wasting my potential hiding in a custodial uniform. But here's what you don't understand, Ms. Cross. I'm not hiding. I'm choosing. I'm choosing to be present for my daughter. I'm choosing to have a life that doesn't require a security detail or classified briefings or wondering if today's the day some ghost from my past comes calling. Those are choices, not limitations. He walked toward the door. Wait. Evelyn's voice was different now, uncertain, almost vulnerable. I'm doing this wrong. I know I am. But I don't know how else to do it. I've spent my entire adult life building this company. It's the only thing I know how to be good at. And last night, watching you work, seeing the way you handled that crisis with complete calm while my entire team fell apart, it made me realize how much I don't know, how much I've been operating on arrogance and assumptions instead of actual competence. Noah paused with his hand on the door. You called me cruel, Evelyn continued. You were right. I've been cruel because I thought it was strength. I've been ruthless because I thought it was leadership. And last night, when you walked away from my money and my offers and my attempts at manipulation, you showed me what actual strength looks like. I want to learn that. I need to learn that. But I don't know how without your help. Noah turned around. You're asking me to teach you to be a better person? I'm asking you to teach me to be a better leader, to show me how someone with your skills and your background chooses to be present instead of powerful, to help me understand how you separated your worth from your work. She met his eyes. And yes, in the process, to keep my company from falling apart and my employees from losing everything. But mostly the first part. For a long moment, Noah didn't speak. Then he said, 3 conditions. Name them. 1. I work part-time, flexible hours, and only when it doesn't conflict with Sarah's schedule. I'm not negotiating on this. Agreed. 2. I'm a consultant, not an employee. I advise, I identify problems, I recommend solutions. But I don't get pulled into corporate politics, board meetings, or any of the performance theater that comes with executive positions. Agreed. 3. You stop trying to control me. No researching my address. No investigating my background beyond what I choose to share. No making decisions about my life without asking. You want to learn about actual strength? It starts with respecting boundaries. Evelyn flinched but nodded. Agreed. All 3 conditions. Should I have a lawyer draw up? Your word is enough. We'll start with a trial period, 1 month. If it works, we continue. If it doesn't, we part ways with no hard feelings. And the salary? Noah named a figure that made Evelyn blink. That's less than half what I was offering. It's what I need to cover Sarah's expenses and give us some security. I don't want more than that. More comes with expectations. Expectations come with obligations. I'm trying to keep my life simple. Evelyn extended her hand. Deal. Noah shook it, her grip firm and businesslike, and tried not to think about all the ways this could go wrong. About how stepping back into that world, even as a consultant, even part-time, meant opening doors he'd spent 4 years keeping closed. About how David Brennan's threats might be the least of his concerns if the wrong people learned he was working in private sector security again. But he thought about Sarah's college fund, currently sitting at $7,000 and growing slowly. About the leak in their apartment bathroom that the landlord kept promising to fix but never did. About the way Sarah's shoes were getting tight and her winter coat was fraying at the cuffs. About having the resources to give her not just necessities but opportunities. Sometimes you made compromises. Sometimes you took risks. Sometimes you chose the complicated path because the simple one wasn't actually working as well as you pretended. When do you want me to start? Noah asked. Today. Right now. I'll have Marcus brief you on everything we've found about Brennan's network. You can work remotely if that's easier. Tomorrow. I need to arrange some things. Make sure Sarah's schedule is covered. Talk to my supervisor about changing shifts. I'll handle your supervisor. Consider yourself on leave from custodial duties effective immediately. Noah frowned. I'd rather... Mr. Mercer. Noah. You just agreed to help me rebuild my company's security infrastructure. I think I can manage the politics of transferring you from maintenance to consulting. She smiled, and for the first time it looked genuine instead of calculated. Let me do this one thing without a negotiation? Fine. But I'm keeping my uniform. I earned it. I wouldn't expect anything less. They left the coffee shop together, stepping into morning sunlight that painted the city in shades of gold and shadow. Evelyn's car, a sleek black sedan that probably cost more than Noah's annual salary, was parked illegally at the curb with a ticket tucked under the windshield wiper. She removed it without looking, dropped it in her purse. You just going to pay that? Noah asked. Cost of doing business. She opened the driver's door, then paused. Can I ask you something personal? You can ask. I might not answer. Your daughter's mother. The file said she died 4 years ago. Was it related to your military work? Noah's expression went very still. No, it was cancer. Stage 4 pancreatic. She was gone 6 weeks after diagnosis. I'm sorry. So am I. Noah looked at the city, the morning traffic, the ordinary chaos of ordinary lives. She made me promise that I'd give Sarah the childhood she deserved, that I wouldn't let the work consume me the way it was starting to. She died knowing I'd keep that promise. So when you offer me money or position or anything else, understand that I'm not turning it down because I don't want success. I'm turning it down because I already promised someone I loved that success isn't what I'm chasing anymore. No, Evelyn was quiet for a moment. Then she said, She must have been remarkable. She was. She saw things in me I didn't see in myself. She made me better. Noah's voice was rough. Which is why when you ask me to teach you about strength or leadership or any of that, I'm not sure I'm the right person. Everything good in me came from her. I don't think that's true. But even if it is, someone taught you. Someone showed you a different way to be. Maybe you can do the same for someone else. Maybe. Noah didn't sound convinced. I'll see you tomorrow, Ms. Cross. 9 a.m.? Evelyn. If we're going to work together, even part-time, you should call me Evelyn. Tomorrow, Evelyn. Noah walked away, hands in his pockets, back toward his apartment and his daughter's eventual return from school. Behind him, Evelyn sat in her expensive car with the unpaid parking ticket and watched him go, something shifting in her chest that felt uncomfortably like respect. Or maybe envy. Or maybe just the first whisper of understanding that everything she'd built her life around might matter less than she'd spent 38 years believing. She drove back to Crosstech Tower, rode the elevator to the 73rd floor, and found Marcus waiting with 3 security consultants, 2 lawyers, and a complete breakdown of David Brennan's network infiltration. Where have you been? Marcus asked. We've been trying to reach you for an hour. Recruiting, Evelyn said. Noah Mercer starts tomorrow as our chief security consultant. Clear his background check, set up his access credentials, and make sure everyone knows he has my full authority on all security matters. You convinced him to take the job? Eventually, it required actual honesty, which turned out to be more effective than money. Evelyn dropped her bag on her desk. What's the situation with Brennan? In the wind. He violated bail conditions and disappeared. Police have a warrant, but no leads. Marcus pulled up surveillance footage. We traced his access backward through 18 months of logs. He wasn't just stealing data, he was mapping our entire corporate structure, documenting our relationships with clients, even tracking individual employee patterns. This wasn't opportunistic theft. This was systematic intelligence gathering. For what purpose? Unknown. But whoever bought that information now knows everything about how Crosstech operates, our vulnerabilities, our strengths, our expansion plans. Marcus looked grim. In the wrong hands, that's enough to destroy us. Evelyn stared at the footage. Brennan's digital ghost moving through their systems, invisible and patient, extracting value they hadn't known they were losing until it was almost too late. Then we need to assume the worst, she said. Assume our competitors have this information. Assume they're already using it. And assume that when Noah comes in tomorrow, we're going to need him to do more than just fix our security architecture. We're going to need him to teach us how to think like someone who's been hunted. You think this goes beyond corporate espionage? I think David Brennan's bail money came from somewhere sophisticated enough to hide the trail through multiple jurisdictions. I think Noah Mercer recognized military-grade intelligence work when he saw it. And I think... Evelyn stopped, recalibrating her certainty into something more honest. I think I don't know enough to know what I don't know, which is exactly why I need Noah. She turned to the windows, looking down at the city from 73 floors up. Somewhere down there, Noah was picking up his daughter from school, helping with homework, making dinner, living a life that had nothing to do with corporate towers or billion-dollar valuations. A life that, from this height, looked impossibly small and impossibly valuable at the same time. Evelyn pressed her palm against the glass, feeling the cold through the barrier, and wondered what it would be like to choose that. To deliberately step away from power and find something more important. To define success by presence instead of profit. She'd spent 20 years building this company. She'd sacrificed relationships, health, any semblance of life outside work. She'd become exactly what she'd set out to become. Powerful, feared, successful by every metric that mattered in the world she'd chosen. And yesterday, a man in a maintenance uniform had looked at all of it and called it cruelty. The worst part was that he'd been right. Get me everything we have on Noah Mercer, Evelyn said quietly. Everything legal, everything ethical. I want to understand who he was before he became who he is now. Because if I'm going to learn from him, I need to understand what he's already learned. Evelyn, Marcus said carefully, he specifically told you not to investigate him. He said not to make decisions about his life without asking. He said to respect his boundaries. He didn't say I couldn't try to understand him better. She turned from the window. There's a difference between invasion and education, Marcus. I'm trying to learn the difference. Marcus looked at her for a long moment, something like concern crossing his features. Are you okay? You've been different since last night, since he showed me that everything I thought was strength was actually fear, Evelyn finished. No, Marcus, I'm not okay, but maybe that's the first honest thing I've been in years. She walked to her desk, opened her laptop, and started reading through the security reports. Started preparing for tomorrow when Noah would arrive and begin the complicated work of teaching her company, teaching her how to be better. Outside, the city hummed with its usual chaos. Inside Crosstech Tower, in the silence of the executive level, Evelyn Cross began the much harder work of admitting she didn't have all the answers. And somewhere across town, Noah Mercer picked up his daughter from school, listened to her talk about her day, and tried not to think about the fact that he'd just agreed to step back into the world he'd spent 4 years escaping. But he thought about it anyway. Because that's what happens when you're good at something dangerous. It never really lets you go. It just waits, patient and inevitable, for the moment when you'll need it again. And whether Noah was ready to admit it or not, that moment had arrived. Noah arrived at Crosstech Tower at 8:45 the next morning, 15 minutes early because old habits were carved into muscle memory. He dropped Sarah at school, watched her disappear into the building with her backpack and her friends, and felt the familiar weight of divided attention settling onto his shoulders. Part of him was already calculating pickup times, homework schedules, dinner plans. The other part was running threat assessments, mapping security vulnerabilities, preparing for whatever chaos Evelyn Cross's world would throw at him today. The lobby security guard, a young guy named Tommy, who'd always nodded politely when Noah came through in his maintenance uniform, did a double take when Noah approached in civilian clothes, a visitor badge clipped to his jacket. "Mr. Mercer, they told me you were coming up as a consultant now. That true?" "Apparently." "Man, that's wild. I always figured you were just keeping your head down, you know? Didn't realize you were actually somebody." Noah paused at the elevator bank. "I'm not somebody, Tommy. I'm just doing a different job for a while." "Yeah, but consultants make bank, and Ms. Cross doesn't bring people in unless they're serious heavy hitters." Tommy leaned in conspiratorially. "Word is you saved the whole company the other night, fixed something none of the engineers could touch." "Word travels fast. Always does in a building like this. Anyway, good for you, man. Nice to see someone get recognized." The elevator arrived. Noah stepped in, pressed 73, and watched Tommy's face disappear as the doors closed. Recognized. The word sat uncomfortably in his mind. He didn't want recognition. He wanted to solve the problem, collect his paycheck, and get back to the life he'd carefully constructed away from people who knew his name. But as the elevator climbed, Noah admitted to himself that something had shifted. Yesterday, walking into that server room, feeling his hands move across keyboards with the old confidence, seeing the system respond to his commands, it had awakened something he'd been trying to keep dormant. Not ambition, exactly. Something quieter and more dangerous. Purpose. The elevator opened onto the executive level. Marcus stood waiting, tablet in hand, looking like he'd already been working for hours. "Noah, good morning. Evelyn's in a meeting with legal, but she wanted me to get you started on the security audit. We've set you up in one of the conference rooms with full system access, and I need to see the physical security first," Noah interrupted. "Server rooms, access points, employee entry protocols. Digital security means nothing if someone can walk in with a USB drive and bypass everything." Marcus blinked. "Oh, right, that makes sense. Follow me." They spent the next 2 hours walking through Crosstech's security infrastructure, or what passed for it. Noah said very little, just observed, made notes on his phone, and felt his assessment of the company's vulnerabilities growing more alarming by the minute. The server room had biometric locks, but the maintenance access used standard keys that probably 20 people had copies of. The badge system logged entries, but nobody actually monitored the logs in real time. The backup generators had security cameras pointed at them, but the cameras themselves were on the same network as everything else, meaning anyone who compromised the digital systems could disable physical surveillance. "This is bad," Noah said finally, standing in the server room where he'd worked 2 nights ago. "This is really bad." "What do you mean? We have top-tier security. Cost us $3 million to install." "You have expensive security theater, but actual security requires integration, redundancy, and constant monitoring. You've got pieces of a system that don't talk to each other, protocols that assume good faith actors, and blind spots you could drive a truck through." Noah pulled up the access logs on his phone. Marcus had given him administrative credentials that morning. "Look at this. In the past week, you've had 47 instances of employees badging in after hours with no corresponding work authorization. Could be legitimate. Could also be someone using a copied badge to access systems when nobody's watching. You think we have another David Brennan? I think you have the conditions that create David Brennans. People with access they don't need, systems that aren't properly monitored, and a culture that prioritizes convenience over security." Noah looked at Marcus directly. "How many people in this building could do what Brennan did if they wanted to?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "I don't know." "Neither do I, which is exactly the problem." They were walking back toward the elevators when Noah's phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. "Captain Mercer, it's been a long time. Congratulations on your new position. Let's hope you're as good at corporate security as you were at keeping our operations secret." Noah stopped walking. Marcus, a few steps ahead, turned back. "Everything okay?" "Yeah, just need to make a call. Give me a minute." "Sure, I'll be in the main conference room when you're ready." Marcus disappeared around the corner. Noah stood in the empty hallway, staring at the message, feeling ice water spread through his chest. V. Victoria Stern, Colonel Victoria Stern, who'd run black operations across 3 continents and knew more about Noah's classified service record than anyone currently breathing. She'd been his commanding officer during the worst deployments, the ones that officially never happened, the operations that carried consequences measured in dead bodies and international incidents. He hadn't heard from her in 4 years. Noah stepped into an empty office, closed the door, and called the number. It rang twice. Captain Mercer. Victoria's voice was exactly as he remembered, crisp, controlled, the kind of voice that gave orders during artillery fire and expected them to be followed. Or should I say Mr. Mercer now? I understand you've retired from the interesting work. Colonel Stern, how did you get this number? Please, you know better than to ask questions like that. He could hear the smile in her voice. I've been keeping tabs on you, Noah, making sure civilian life was treating you well. And it was, wasn't it? Right up until 2 nights ago when you decided to step back into the game. I fixed a server problem. That's not the game. You exposed a sophisticated intelligence operation embedded in a major tech company. You demonstrated capabilities that a lot of people would prefer stayed forgotten. That's absolutely the game, whether you want it to be or not. Noah's grip tightened on the phone. What do you want? To give you a warning, David Brennan wasn't working alone, and he wasn't working for corporate competitors. The people backing him have resources that make Crosstech look like a lemonade stand. They're going to be very interested in the man who dismantled 18 months of careful infiltration in one evening. Then they can be interested from a distance. I'm not going back to that life. You think you have a choice? Noah, you've always been brilliant but occasionally naive. You put yourself on the map. You demonstrated value. People who trade in valuable assets don't just let them walk away because they want to play house with their daughter. The mention of Sarah sent rage through Noah's careful control. If anyone touches my daughter, relax. Nobody's threatening your kid. I'm trying to help you, believe it or not. The people behind Brennan are called the Covenant. They're a collective of intelligence brokers, ex-agency, ex-military, the kind of people who know how wars actually work and who's really pulling the strings. They sell information to the highest bidder regardless of nationality or ideology, and they're very unhappy that you've exposed their operation. Then they shouldn't have gotten caught. Noah, I'm serious. These aren't amateurs. They've been operating for a decade without anyone getting close enough to identify them. And now you've cost them millions in lost revenue and compromised one of their assets. They're going to respond. Let them try. That's exactly what I'm afraid you'll say. Victoria sighed. Listen, I know you left the service because of Melissa. I know you wanted a clean break, a normal life for Sarah. I respect that. But the world doesn't stop having problems just because you decided to stop solving them. And right now, whether you like it or not, you're in the middle of something that's going to require your old skills. I don't work for you anymore, Colonel. I'm not asking you to work for me. I'm asking you to be smart. Watch your back. Keep your daughter safe. And if things get complicated, when they get complicated, remember that you're not alone. There are people who owe you favors from the old days. People who remember what you did in places that officially don't exist. Use them if you need to. I don't want their help. Pride's going to get you killed, Captain. I'm not a captain anymore. You'll always be a captain. That's not rank, that's character. You don't stop being who you are just because you change your uniform. Victoria's voice softened slightly. Take care of yourself, Noah. And tell that daughter of yours that there are people in this world who are grateful her father kept them alive long enough to have families of their own. The line went dead. Noah stood in the empty office, phone in hand, trying to control the trembling in his fingers. The Covenant. He'd heard rumors during his service, whispers about a group that operated above national interests, selling secrets to whoever paid the most. He'd always assumed they were intelligence community legend, the kind of boogeyman story people told to justify their own paranoia. Apparently not. He took several deep breaths, forced his hands steady, and walked back to find Marcus. The conference room was set up exactly as promised. 3 monitors, system access terminals, secure workstation. Marcus had even brought coffee, the good kind from the executive break room. Sorry about that, Noah said. Where were we? Security audit. But actually, Evelyn's meeting just ended. She wants to see you in her office. Now? Yeah, she seemed pretty insistent. Noah followed Marcus down the hall to Evelyn's corner office. The door was open. She sat behind her desk, phone pressed to her ear, gesturing sharply as she spoke. When she saw Noah, she held up one finger, wait, and finished her conversation. I don't care what the board thinks, Jeffrey. We're not postponing the security overhaul just because it's going to inconvenience people. What happened 2 nights ago should never happen again, and if that means everyone in this building has to get used to new protocols, so be it. She listened for a moment, then cut him off. No more discussion. This is happening. Goodbye. She hung up, rubbed her temples, and looked at Noah. Please tell me you have good news. I have an accurate assessment of your security situation. Whether that's good news depends on your tolerance for bad news. That bad? Worse than you think. Better than it could be if we move fast. Noah sat down without being invited. You need a complete security overhaul. Physical and digital. New protocols for employee access. Real-time monitoring of all entry points. Segmented network architecture to prevent lateral movement if someone breaches the perimeter. It's going to be expensive, disruptive, and unpopular. How expensive? Noah named a figure that made Evelyn wince. That's more than our entire quarterly security budget. Then increase the budget. Because right now, you're one motivated insider away from losing everything again. David Brennan wasn't sophisticated. He just exploited weaknesses that nobody was paying attention to. Someone actually skilled could do 10 times the damage. Evelyn was quiet for a moment, processing. Then she said, What aren't you telling me? What do you mean? You came in here tense, more than the situation warrants. Something happened between the lobby and my office. So, what was it? Noah hesitated. He'd agreed to consult on security, not drag Evelyn into the complicated shadows of his past. But Victoria's warning echoed in his mind. When they get complicated, not if. When? I got a message, he said carefully, from someone I used to work with. They wanted me to know that David Brennan's backers are more sophisticated than we initially thought. Corporate espionage was just the surface. Underneath, there's an intelligence network called the Covenant. They trade information globally, no allegiances except to profit. And I apparently got their attention when I dismantled their operation here. Evelyn's face went pale. How dangerous are they? Dangerous enough that my former commanding officer called to warn me personally. Dangerous enough that you need to understand what you're getting into by keeping me on as a consultant. What I'm getting into? Noah, what are you getting into? You have a daughter. Well, which is exactly why I need to know how serious you are about security. Because if the Covenant decides Crosstech is a lost investment, they'll walk away. But if they decide there's still value to extract, or if they want to make an example of the people who exposed them, this gets much more complicated, and I need to know if you're prepared for that. Evelyn stood, walked to her window, and looked out at the city. 3 years ago, a competitor tried to poach our entire engineering team, offered them double salary, stock options, the works. I could have matched the offer financially, but instead I sat down with each person individually and asked them why they worked here, what it meant to them, what we were building together that mattered more than just a paycheck. 90% of them stayed, not because of money, but because of purpose. She turned back to Noah. I'm telling you this because you need to understand something about me. I'm not good at a lot of things. I'm not good at relationships or vulnerability or admitting when I'm wrong, but I am very good at commitment. When I decide something matters, I don't walk away. Not for money, not for convenience, not for fear. This isn't a competitor trying to poach your team. This is actual danger, I understand. But here's what I think you're not understanding. I brought you here because you showed me that everything I built my life around was fundamentally hollow. You showed me that real strength isn't domination, it's presence. That real leadership isn't control, it's respect. So if the cost of learning those lessons is dealing with some shadowy intelligence network, then that's the cost. I'm not walking away from this. From you teaching me to be better, not because of threats. Noah studied her face, looking for the calculation, the angle she was working. He found nothing but stubborn determination and something that looked uncomfortably like genuine conviction. You're serious, he said, completely. Even knowing this could get complicated, that it might require more than just security consultations, that the people I'm talking about don't play by rules or respect boundaries, even knowing that. Evelyn sat back down, met his eyes directly. But I have one condition. What? You don't face this alone. Whatever's coming, we deal with it together. Full transparency, combined resources, actual partnership. Because I'm betting the reason they think they can intimidate you is that you're trying to protect everyone by keeping them at a distance. Am I wrong? Noah didn't answer immediately. She wasn't wrong. That was exactly what he'd been doing for 4 years. Keeping distance, maintaining boundaries, ensuring that his past couldn't bleed into Sarah's present. But alone, against the Covenant, he was a single target. Vulnerable. Predictable. With Crosstech's resources, with Evelyn's ruthless intelligence and Marcus's technical expertise, he was something different, something harder to threaten. Partnership has rules, Noah said finally. I'm not your employee and you're not my commanding officer. We're equals in this, or it doesn't work. Agreed. And Sarah stays out of it, completely. Whatever we do, however we respond, my daughter's life remains normal and untouched. That's non-negotiable. Of course, I would never. You would if you thought it was necessary. You would if you calculated that the benefits outweighed the costs. That's who you are, Evelyn. That's how you think. So I'm telling you now, before we get any deeper into this, my daughter is the line. Cross it, even with good intentions, and we're done, permanently. The words hung in the air between them, sharp and absolute. Evelyn nodded slowly. Understood. Sarah stays protected and separate. You have my word. Then we have a deal. Noah extended his hand. Evelyn shook it, her grip firm, and for the first time since this entire situation began, Noah felt something like relief. He wasn't alone anymore. He'd chosen not to be. It was terrifying and pragmatic and possibly the smartest decision he'd made since leaving the service. Marcus appeared in the doorway. Sorry to interrupt, but we have a situation. David Brennan just posted a video online. It's going viral. He turned his tablet toward them. On the screen, David Brennan sat in what looked like a hotel room, unshaven and wild-eyed, speaking directly to the camera. My name is David Brennan. 2 nights ago, I was arrested for allegedly stealing information from Crosstech Industries. But what nobody's telling you is why I took that information or who I was protecting you from. Crosstech isn't just a tech company. They're developing surveillance systems for governments that suppress their citizens. They're building infrastructure that enables authoritarian regimes. And they're hiding it all behind corporate PR and progressive branding. Noah and Evelyn exchanged glances. Marcus turned the volume up. I took those files to expose what Crosstech really is, to show the world that Evelyn Cross isn't a visionary leader. She's a war profiteer dressed in designer suits. And the man they brought in to stop me? Noah Mercer? He's not some hero consultant. He's a black ops specialist with a classified record so dark that even mentioning his name in certain circles gets you disappeared. Ask yourself why Crosstech needs someone like that on their payroll. Ask yourself what they're really building in that tower. The video cut to images, classified documents with heavy redaction, photos that could have been anything, financial records that proved nothing but looked incriminating in the right context. I'm releasing everything I have to journalists worldwide. Everything Crosstech doesn't want you to know. And if something happens to me, if I suddenly disappear or die under mysterious circumstances, you'll know exactly who to blame. The video ended. The office was silent for a long moment. Then Evelyn said very quietly, "That son of a bitch just declared war." "Not war," Noah corrected, his mind already racing through implications, countermoves, probable next steps. This is a distraction. Brennan's not sophisticated enough to orchestrate this alone. Someone's feeding him information, coaching him on what to say. They want us focused on public relations and legal defense while they do something else. What's something else? I don't know yet, but this video wasn't about exposure. It was about misdirection. Noah pulled out his phone, started typing. "Marcus, I need you to trace the video's origin, find out where it was uploaded from, what devices were used, any digital fingerprints. Evelyn, you need to get ahead of the PR disaster before it spirals. And I need access to your classified project files." Evelyn went very still. "What classified projects?" "Whatever Brennan is referring to in that video. The surveillance systems, the government contracts. He's making it up or extrapolating from partial information, but for his claims to gain traction, there needs to be some foundation of truth. So what are you actually working on that could be weaponized against you? We have a few government contracts, standard defense work, nothing. Evelyn. Noah's voice was sharp. This is the transparency part of partnership. I need to know what ammunition they're using against you so I can figure out how to neutralize it. She hesitated, calculation warring with trust on her face. Then she made a decision. We have a contract with 3 allied governments for advanced infrastructure monitoring. It's designed to detect cyber attacks on critical systems, power grids, water treatment, emergency services. The technology can absolutely be used for surveillance if implemented improperly, which is why we built in privacy safeguards and require oversight. But if someone wanted to make it sound sinister, they could. Anything else? A pattern recognition system for financial institutions to detect money laundering. Again, legitimate application with potential for misuse. We're not building tools for oppression, Noah. We're building tools for security that could theoretically be perverted. Which is all they need. They take your legitimate work, strip context, add sinister interpretation, and suddenly you're the villain. Noah was typing rapidly on his phone. This is a classic intelligence operation. Discredit the target, destroy their credibility, make any defense look like guilty denial. The goal isn't truth, it's chaos. Marcus looked up from his tablet. The video was uploaded through a VPN chain, but I'm tracking the pattern. It's similar to Brennan's previous access methods, which means whoever's backing him gave him the same tools they used for the initial infiltration. Can you trace it back to source? Maybe, probably. It's going to take time. You don't have time, Noah said, because if this is a distraction, the real attack is already in motion. What would hurt Crosstech more than PR damage? What would be worth risking exposure for? Evelyn's eyes widened. The launch. The global client launch is in 36 hours. If they compromise that, they won't compromise it. They'll destroy it completely. Make it fail so catastrophically that every claim in Brennan's video looks true. Discredit you, bankrupt the company, and prove that your security is worthless. Noah stood. Marcus, forget the video trace. Check the launch systems. Every component, every connection, every piece of code. Look for anything that doesn't belong. That's hundreds of systems across 14 countries. Then get every engineer you have working on it. Now. Marcus ran. Noah turned to Evelyn. You need to prepare for worst-case scenario. If they've compromised the launch, you need to be ready to pull the plug. Cancel everything, eat the costs, and survive to rebuild. That would destroy us. 18 months of development, $300 million in investment, contracts with 47 partners worldwide. If we cancel now, if you launch with a compromised system, it won't just destroy Crosstech. It'll destroy every client you're connected to. It'll prove every accusation Brennan made and paint you as reckless or complicit. Noah's voice was gentler now. I know what you're afraid of. I know what this company means to you. But sometimes survival means strategic retreat. I didn't build Crosstech by retreating. No, you built it by being ruthless and ambitious and never backing down, which is exactly what they're counting on. They want you to push forward out of pride. They want you to launch on schedule because canceling would look like admission of guilt. They're using your strength against you, Evelyn. Don't let them. She looked at him for a long moment, something in her expression shifting between anger and understanding, and finally, reluctantly, acceptance. How did you get so good at this? She asked quietly. By being on the other side. By running operations exactly like this one in places where the stakes were lives instead of money. I know how these people think because I used to be these people. And now you're helping me fight them. Now I'm trying to keep you alive long enough to become the person you keep saying you want to be. Noah checked his watch. It was nearly noon. He needed to pick up Sarah at 3. 4 hours to find the threat, neutralize it, and somehow keep everyone safe. Call your board. Tell them the launch might be delayed. Don't give reasons yet, just plant the seed. If we find the compromise, you'll have prepared them. If we don't, you can proceed as planned. And if we find it too late, then we deal with it, together, like partners. Evelyn nodded, picked up her phone, and started making calls. Noah left her office, found Marcus in the main conference room surrounded by engineers, all of them staring at screens with varying expressions of concentration and panic. Talk to me, Noah said. We're finding things, Marcus said. Small things. Code comments that don't match our style guides. functions that do slightly more than their documentation claims. Nothing definitively malicious yet, but it's adding up. Death by 1,000 cuts. They didn't plant one big bomb. They planted dozens of small compromises that collectively do the same thing. Noah pulled up a terminal, started reviewing the suspicious code. His hands moved automatically, pattern recognition kicking in, seeing the architecture beneath the noise. Here, this function validates user authentication, but it's also logging credentials to an external server disguised as error reporting. And here, this monitoring routine is supposed to track system performance, but it's actually creating a backdoor for remote access. How are you seeing this so fast? Because I've written code exactly like this. When you're operating in hostile territory, you build tools that hide in plain sight. This is textbook Black Ops programming, functional enough to pass review, subtle enough to avoid detection, devastating when activated. Noah kept scanning, finding more compromises, each one small but connected. They've been building this for months, probably since before Brennan was even caught. He was never the main operation. He was the insurance policy. Kira, the engineer with purple hair from 2 nights ago, leaned over his shoulder. If they've been building this for months, how do we stop it in 36 hours? We don't stop it. We let them think they've won, then turn their own trap against them. Everyone looked at him. Noah smiled, cold and tactical. They built a network of compromises designed to activate during the launch and cascade into total failure. But every compromise has a signature, a pattern that identifies who wrote it and how it communicates. If we can map their entire network, trace all the backdoors and hidden functions, we can isolate them. And once they're isolated, we control them. You want to leave their traps in place? Marcus asked. I want them to activate their traps thinking they've won, only to discover we've been ready the entire time. I want them to expose themselves completely, every connection, every handler, every piece of their infrastructure. And then I want to burn it all down so thoroughly they never try this again. The engineers were staring at him now with a mixture of fear and excitement. That's insane, Kira said. Yes, Noah agreed. But it's also the only way to win. They have too many backdoors, too much embedded code, too much time invested. We can't find everything in 36 hours, but we can pretend we haven't found anything, let them proceed with confidence, and strike when they're fully committed. And if it doesn't work? Marcus asked. If we miss something or they adapt? Then we crash the entire launch manually before their traps can activate. We lose the battle but survive the war. Noah looked at Marcus directly. I need your trust, all of you. This is going to look like we're failing right up until the moment we win. Can you live with that? The room was silent. Then Kira said, I'm in. Tell me what you need. One by one, the other engineers nodded. Marcus let out a long breath. All right, we do this your way. But Noah, if this goes wrong, I'll take full responsibility. Evelyn walks away clean, you all keep your jobs, and I disappear back into whatever hole I crawled out of. Deal? Deal. Noah checked his watch again, 2:30. He needed to leave in 20 minutes to get Sarah on time. Marcus, coordinate the teams. I need every compromise documented, every backdoor mapped, every connection traced. Work overnight if you have to. Tomorrow morning, we'll plan the counterstrike. He grabbed his jacket. I have to go. Now? In the middle of this? Yes. Because my daughter gets out of school in 30 minutes, and I promised her I'd never miss pickup. This operation happens on my schedule, or it doesn't happen at all. He walked out, leaving behind a room full of engineers who were just beginning to understand that the quiet man in the maintenance uniform had been something far more dangerous all along. Noah made it to Sarah's school with 5 minutes to spare, parked in his usual spot, and waited with the other parents. He watched them chat, share stories, live their normal lives, and felt the weight of the double existence he was building. To them, he was just another dad. To Crosstech, he was becoming something else. To the Covenant, he was a problem that needed solving. Sarah burst out of the school building with her usual enthusiasm, spotted Noah, and ran over. Dad, guess what? We're doing a science fair next month, and I want to build a volcano that actually erupts. Sounds messy. I love it. Can we get the supplies this weekend? Absolutely, but first, homework and dinner. What sounds good? Tacos. Tacos it is. They drove home, Sarah chattering about her day, Noah responding at all the right moments while part of his mind was still at Crosstech Tower, mapping contingencies, calculating risks, preparing for the moment when quiet consultation would transform into something much more serious. His phone buzzed. Text from Evelyn. Board is prepared for possible delay. Marcus says you're planning something insane and brilliant. Try to survive long enough to explain it. Noah smiled despite everything and texted back, Surviving is what I do best. He put the phone away, helped Sarah with her homework, made tacos, and tried to be fully present. Because this, right here, right now, helping his daughter with fractions and listening to her dreams about volcanic science projects, this was what mattered. This was what he'd left the service to protect. And if the Covenant wanted to threaten that, they were about to learn why Captain Noah Mercer had survived operations that killed everyone else. Not because he was the strongest or the fastest or the most ruthless, but because he always knew exactly what he was fighting for. Sarah fell asleep by 9, exhausted from her day and the excitement of planning her volcanic science project. Noah sat in the kitchen afterward, laptop open, remotely accessing Crosstech systems through the secure connection Marcus had established. The apartment was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic from the street below. Normal sounds. Safe sounds. The soundtrack of the life he'd built. But on his screen, something far from normal was unfolding. The engineers had found 43 separate compromises embedded in the launch systems, each one small enough to escape individual scrutiny, but collectively they formed a network designed to cascade into catastrophic failure at the exact moment Crosstech went live with their global client launch. Noah traced the connections, mapped the logic, and felt a cold admiration for whoever had designed this. It was elegant, patient, and absolutely lethal. His phone rang. Evelyn calling at 9:47 on a Tuesday night. "You should be sleeping," Noah said instead of hello. "So should you, but here we are. I've been reading the reports Marcus is sending. This is worse than we thought, isn't it?" "It's exactly as bad as I thought, which is why we're going to let them think they've won right up until they haven't." "Noah, I need you to understand something. If this fails, if the launch collapses, Crosstech doesn't recover. The company I spent 20 years building will be gone. 47,000 people lose their jobs. Clients lose their trust. Everything I am disappears." "I know. So when you tell me to trust you, when you say we're going to turn their trap against them, I need to know you're not just being confident. I need to know you've actually done this before." Noah was quiet for a moment, weighing how much truth to share. Then he said, 3 years ago, I was part of an operation in a place I can't name, working to protect infrastructure that officially doesn't exist. The enemy had spent 6 months embedding malware in our systems. The same strategy, the same patience. If we'd tried to remove it all, we would have tipped them off and they would have activated early. So instead, we mapped every compromise, isolated every backdoor, and built a mirror system they didn't know about. When they attacked, thinking they'd destroyed everything, we let them commit fully. Then we used their own network to trace back to their command structure and eliminated the entire operation. They thought they'd won right up until the moment they realized they'd exposed themselves completely. And it worked? I'm here talking to you, aren't I? The infrastructure stayed operational. The enemy was neutralized. Nobody died who shouldn't have. Noah's voice hardened slightly. But Evelyn, that was a military operation with military resources and authorization to use lethal force if necessary. This is different. We're playing the same game, but with corporate rules and legal constraints. If I miscalculate, if they adapt faster than we anticipate, we don't get to call in air support. We just lose. Then don't miscalculate. The simple confidence in her voice surprised him. You really trust me that much? I trust that you know what you're doing. I trust that you wouldn't risk this if you weren't certain. And I trust that you understand the stakes better than I do because you've actually lived through this kind of thing before. She paused. What I don't trust is whether you'll let yourself succeed. What does that mean? It means I've been watching you, Noah. Not investigating, just observing. And I see someone who spent 4 years punishing himself for surviving when his wife didn't. Someone who took a job pushing a mop because he thought he didn't deserve more. Someone who walks away from every opportunity because he's convinced that being happy would be a betrayal of the person he lost. Noah felt something cold settle in his chest. You don't know anything about... I know that Melissa made you promise to give Sarah a normal childhood, but I'm betting she also made you promise to live. To not just survive, but actually live. And you've been breaking that second promise for 4 years. This conversation is over. Wait, please. I'm not trying to hurt you. I'm trying to help you see that whatever happens tomorrow, whether we win or lose, you deserve to be more than a ghost in your own life. Sarah deserves a father who's present, yes, but she also deserves a father who remembers how to be himself. Noah's hand tightened on the phone. You have no right. I have every right because you made us partners. Because you told me we face this together. And partners tell each other hard truths even when it's uncomfortable. Her voice softened. Tomorrow, when we spring this trap, you're going to be brilliant and tactical and probably save all of us. But after that, when the crisis is over and you've proven whatever you think you need to prove, I want you to ask yourself something. Are you doing this to protect Sarah? Or are you doing this to punish yourself? She hung up before he could respond. Noah sat in his kitchen, phone in hand, feeling something crack in the careful walls he'd built around his grief. The worst part was that Evelyn was right. Melissa had made him promise 2 things in those final weeks. Take care of Sarah, and don't let the work consume him. He'd kept the first promise religiously. The second one he'd been breaking since the day they buried her. He looked at the photo on the refrigerator. Melissa, Sarah, and himself at the beach 2 months before the diagnosis. All of them laughing, windblown, alive. Melissa had taken a dozen photos that day, trying to capture perfect moments. But this one was Noah's favorite because nobody was posing. They were just being, just living. When had he stopped doing that? His laptop chimed. Email from Marcus with the final compromise map. 43 individual vulnerabilities, all connected, all timed to activate during the launch sequence. Noah studied the architecture, looking for the pattern beneath the complexity. There was always a pattern. The question was whether he could find it fast enough. He worked until 2 in the morning, building the counter strategy, then forced himself to sleep for 4 hours. Old military discipline. You rested when you could because you never knew when you'd get another chance. He woke at 6, checked on Sarah still sleeping, and drove to Crosstech Tower in the pre-dawn darkness. Marcus was already there, looking like he'd never left. Probably hadn't. The conference room had been transformed into a command center, multiple screens showing system status, engineers working in shifts, coffee cups and energy drink cans scattered across every surface. Please tell me you have good news, Marcus said when Noah walked in. I have a plan. Whether that's good news depends on your tolerance for risk. At this point, I'd settle for any news that isn't catastrophic. Noah pulled up the compromise map on the main screen. They've built their attack to cascade through 3 stages. First, authentication failures that look like normal system stress. Second, data corruption that appears to be human error. Third, total system collapse that seems like infrastructure failure. Each stage is designed to look innocent until the next one triggers, at which point it's too late to stop the cascade. So how do we stop it? We don't. We let it start. We let them trigger stage 1 during the launch. Let them think they've succeeded. But while they're celebrating, we're monitoring every connection, every data flow, every communication between their compromised systems. They have to coordinate this attack in real time because it's too complex to be fully automated. That coordination will expose their command structure. Kira looked up from her terminal. You want to use ourselves as bait. I want to use their own trap as a tracking device. Once we've mapped their entire network, not just what's in our systems, but where it connects externally, we isolate everything simultaneously, cut them off mid-attack, preserve evidence of the intrusion, and hand it all to law enforcement with a complete chain of custody. And if they realize what we're doing before we can isolate them, Marcus asked, then we have a fallback. I've built a kill switch into our core systems. One command executed simultaneously across all servers and everything shuts down clean. We lose the launch, we lose the investment, but we protect the clients and preserve the company's integrity. Evelyn will never agree to a kill switch. Evelyn already agreed. I talked to her last night. Noah pulled up the execution plan. Here's the timeline. Launch initiates at 10 a.m. Stage 1 of their attack will trigger approximately 30 seconds later, just long enough for press coverage to go live. We'll have a 2-minute window to complete the trace before Stage 2 activates. If we succeed, we isolate their network and preserve everything. If we fail, I trigger the kill switch and we go down fighting. The room was silent for a long moment. Then Marcus said, "This is insane." "Yes," Noah agreed, "but it's also the only plan we have that doesn't guarantee failure." "Also, yes." "All right." Marcus stood, addressed the room. "Everyone hear that? We're doing this. I need Alpha Team on network monitoring, Beta Team on isolation protocols, Gamma Team on evidence preservation. When this starts, it's going to move fast. No second guessing, no hesitation. We trust the plan and we trust each other. Questions?" Nobody spoke. "Good. We launch in 3 hours. Get some food, get some rest if you can, and be ready. This is going to be the longest 2 minutes of your lives." The engineers dispersed to their tasks. Noah checked his phone, message from Sarah's school confirming she'd arrived safely, another from the neighbor who'd agreed to pick her up and keep her for the afternoon. He'd told Sarah he had an important work thing, that he might be late, that he loved her. She'd hugged him extra tight this morning, sensing something she was too young to articulate. "You okay?" Marcus appeared at his elbow. "Trying to be." "Evelyn told me what she said to you last night, about Melissa, about you punishing yourself." Marcus hesitated. "For what it's worth, I think she was out of line, but I also think she was right. Everyone's suddenly an expert on my mental state." "No, but we're people who care about you, which I know is uncomfortable because you've spent 4 years making sure nobody got close enough to care. But tough luck, Noah. You helped save this company. You trusted us with your plan. That makes you part of the team whether you want to be or not." Noah felt something uncomfortable in his chest. "I'm not staying after this, you know that, right? Once the threat is neutralized, I go back to my life." "Do you?" "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're finally remembering who you are, and maybe that's not something you walk away from." Before Noah could respond, his phone rang. Unknown number. He answered cautiously. "Captain Mercer." A voice he didn't recognize, digitally modulated to disguise identity. "You're making a mistake." Noah's entire body went rigid. He gestured to Marcus, "Trace this," and kept his voice neutral. "Who is this?" "Someone giving you a chance to walk away. The launch is going to fail. Crosstech is going to collapse. Accept this and protect your daughter, or fight it and lose everything. Your choice." "If you touch my daughter, we're not monsters, Captain. We don't hurt children, but we will destroy everything else you care about if you don't step aside. You've already cost us one operation. Don't make us teach you why that was a mistake." "The Covenant, right? That's who you are? The intelligence brokers who think they're above consequences?" Silence on the line. Then, "You've been talking to Colonel Stern." "Interesting. Does Evelyn Cross know exactly who she's partnered with? Does she know about Yemen? About the operation that officially never happened but left 37 people dead?" Noah's blood ran cold. Those were enemy combatants in a war zone. Were they? Because our files tell a different story. Tell a story about an operation that went wrong, about collateral damage that got classified to protect certain reputations. Tell a story about Captain Noah Mercer executing orders that crossed lines even in the shadow world he operated in. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I? We have the unredacted reports, Captain. We have the real story. And if you don't walk away from Crosstech right now, if you don't let this launch fail quietly, we'll make sure that story becomes public. We'll make sure Sarah grows up knowing exactly what kind of man her father really is. The line went dead. Noah stood frozen, phone in hand, feeling the past crash into the present with devastating force. Yemen. He hadn't thought about Yemen in 4 years. Hadn't let himself think about it because the memory was poison. Marcus touched his shoulder. "Noah? We got a partial trace, but they bounced through too many proxies. What did they say?" "They threatened Sarah." "What? We need to call the police, get protection." "No, they're not going to hurt her. That was a feint." Noah's voice was hollow. "They threatened something worse. They threatened to destroy who she thinks I am." "I don't understand." "You don't need to." Noah pulled up the launch controls on his terminal. "Change of plans. We're not waiting for them to attack. We're going in now, mapping their entire network before the launch even starts. That's not possible. We need the launch to trigger their coordination. We need to end this before it gets worse, before they escalate beyond corporate sabotage into something I can't protect Sarah from. Noah's fingers were already moving across the keyboard, pulling up access logs, tracing connection patterns. Trust me, Marcus, please. Noah, you're not making sense. What did they say that's making you... They said they'll tell my daughter that her father is a monster. They said they'll take the worst moment of my life and turn it into propaganda. They said they'll destroy her childhood by making her afraid of me. Noah's voice cracked slightly. I can survive a lot of things. I can survive threats, attacks, even death. But I can't survive Sarah looking at me with fear. I won't let them do that to her. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then he pulled up a chair, sat down next to Noah, and said, "Then we stop them. Right now. Whatever it takes." They worked in furious silence, Noah's hands moving with the muscle memory of 1,000 operations, Marcus coordinating the team through encrypted channels. They traced every connection, mapped every node, followed the digital breadcrumbs back through layers of obfuscation. It was like excavating a buried network, each discovery leading to 3 more questions. And then, 90 minutes before launch, Noah found it. The command node, hidden in plain sight within Crosstech's own contracted cloud services, masquerading as a legitimate backup system. From this single point, the entire attack was orchestrated. And more importantly, from this point, everything could be traced backward to the people actually controlling it. Got you, Noah breathed. He pulled up the node's connection logs and started backward analysis. The Covenant had been careful, but they'd also been operating for months, and months of activity meant patterns. Patterns meant mistakes, and mistakes meant exposure. 30 minutes before launch, Noah had mapped the entire network. 17 different access points across 4 continents, all feeding back to 3 primary controllers. The architecture was sophisticated, but now that he could see it, it was vulnerable. Evelyn appeared in the conference room dressed for the press event that was supposed to accompany the launch. Marcus says you found something. Found everything, the entire network. Every compromise, every controller, every piece of infrastructure they've built. Noah pulled up the map on the main screen. They're not just attacking us. They're running similar operations against at least 6 other companies simultaneously. This is their business model: infiltrate, extract, destroy. Can we stop them? Yes, but not the way I originally planned. We can't wait for them to attack because they've escalated beyond corporate sabotage. They're threatening to weaponize my military record against me, against Sarah. Evelyn's expression went cold. What did they say exactly? Noah told her about the phone call, about Yemen, about the threat to destroy Sarah's image of him. As he spoke, he watched Evelyn's face transform from concern to something harder and more dangerous. No, she said quietly, absolutely not. We're not letting them do that. We don't have a choice. If I fight them, they release whatever distorted version of Yemen they've constructed. If I walk away, they win, but Sarah stays protected. That's not how this works. That's not how any of this works. Evelyn turned to Marcus. Cancel the launch. Right now. Announce technical difficulties. What? Evelyn, if we cancel, I don't care. We're not launching until we've neutralized this threat completely. She looked at Noah. You said you can map their entire network. Can you shut it down? All of it? Not just what's in our systems, but their entire operation? Theoretically, but it would require accessing their command node, which means breaking about a dozen laws. I don't care about laws right now. I care about protecting you and Sarah and making sure these people never threaten anyone like this again. Can you do it? Noah met her eyes and saw something he hadn't expected. Not calculation or strategy, but genuine fury on his behalf. She wasn't trying to save her company anymore. She was trying to protect him. Yes, he said, I can do it. But if I do this, there's no going back. It's cyber warfare. It's illegal. It's the kind of thing that could put me in prison if anyone traces it back. Then we make sure nobody traces it back. Evelyn pulled out her phone. I know people who owe me favors, people who can make evidence disappear if necessary. You focus on the technical work. I'll handle the consequences. Why? Noah asked. Why would you risk everything for this? Because 3 days ago you showed me what actual strength looks like. You showed me that real power isn't domination. It's choosing to show up for the people who matter. And right now, you matter. Sarah matters. This fight matters." She smiled without humor. "Besides, I'm tired of being afraid of people like the Covenant. I'm tired of playing defense. It's time they learned what happens when you threaten the wrong person." Noah looked at her for a long moment, seeing past the CEO and the corporate armor to the person underneath. Someone who'd spent her life building walls and was finally learning to fight for something beyond her own empire. "All right," he said, "but we do this my way, completely. No legal oversight, no corporate approval, no safety nets. Once we start, we're committed until it's done." "Agreed. Marcus, clear the room. What we're about to do doesn't involve the team. It's just the three of us." Marcus hesitated, then nodded and dismissed the engineers. When the conference room was empty except for the three of them, Noah pulled up the Covenant's command node and began the intrusion. It was like lockpicking on a massive scale, each security layer a tumbler to be manipulated, each firewall a barrier to be bypassed. Noah worked with absolute focus, his fingers moving across the keyboard in patterns that came from years of doing exactly this kind of work in exactly these kinds of circumstances. Illegal, dangerous, necessary. Behind him, Evelyn watched in silence. Marcus monitored external communications, making sure nobody was noticing what they were doing. 20 minutes later, Noah was inside the command node. "This is it," he said quietly. "This is where they coordinate everything. I can see their other operations, their target lists, their communication protocols. If I crash this node, I crash their entire network. Every operation they're running fails simultaneously." "Do it," Evelyn said. "It's not that simple. If I crash it, they'll rebuild. They've survived for a decade because they're resilient and patient. We need to do more than crash them. We need to burn them so completely they can't recover." "What do you need?" "Access to their financial networks, their cryptocurrency wallets, their offshore accounts, everything they've stolen, everything they've earned, every resource they use to operate. If I can drain them financially while destroying their operational infrastructure, they don't just fail. They cease to exist." Marcus looked up. "That's not cyber warfare. That's digital assassination." "Yes," Noah agreed, "it is, which is why I'm giving you both one last chance to walk away. What I'm about to do crosses lines that shouldn't be crossed. It's theft, it's sabotage, it's probably a dozen other crimes I'm not thinking of right now. If you're part of this, you're complicit, so decide right now if you can live with that." Evelyn didn't hesitate. "Do it." Marcus took longer, his face reflecting the internal calculation of risk versus necessity. Then he nodded. "Do it. But Noah? After this, we make sure Sarah never has to know what you did to protect her." "That's the plan." Noah took a breath, centered himself, and began the final assault. He worked methodically, draining cryptocurrency wallets into distributed accounts that would be impossible to trace, corrupting backup systems, deleting redundant infrastructure. With each action, he felt the old coldness settling over him, the operational mindset that turned off empathy and focused entirely on mission completion. The Covenant had made this personal, had threatened his daughter, had tried to weaponize his past against his present. That was their mistake. Because Captain Noah Mercer had survived a decade of black operations by being better at this than anyone else, by being willing to do what was necessary when everything else failed. And right now, what was necessary was destroying the Covenant so completely that they couldn't threaten anyone ever again. 30 minutes later, it was done. The command node was corrupted beyond recovery. The financial accounts were drained. The operational infrastructure was burned. Every system the Covenant relied on was either destroyed or compromised. They still existed as individuals, but as an organization, they were finished. Noah leaned back in his chair, hands shaking slightly from adrenaline and the weight of what he'd just done. "It's over," he said. Marcus checked his monitoring systems. Their network is dark. Everything's offline. Whatever they were running, it just died. Evelyn pulled up her phone, made a call. "Jeffrey?" "Yes, it's me. We're launching on schedule. The technical issues are resolved. Make the announcement." She hung up. The launch proceeds. Crosstech survives. And the Covenant learns that some people fight back. Noah's phone rang. Unknown number. He answered. "Captain Mercer." The same digitally modulated voice, but this time with an edge of panic. What did you do? I protected my daughter. I protected my company. I protected everyone you've ever threatened. Noah's voice was cold, clinical. You should have walked away when you had the chance. You've declared war on... No, I've ended a war you started. Your network is destroyed. Your finances are gone. Your operations are dead. And just so we're clear, if anyone associated with the Covenant ever comes near me or my family again, what I just did to your infrastructure, I'll do to you personally. Are we understood? Silence. Then the line went dead. Noah set down the phone and realized his hands were shaking, not from fear, from the adrenaline crash that always came after operations like this, from the weight of crossing lines he'd sworn he'd never cross again. Evelyn placed a hand on his shoulder. You okay? No, but I will be. What you just did was necessary. Don't make it more than that. Don't make me a hero for doing something that should never have been needed. I was going to say thank you. Noah looked at her, saw the genuine gratitude in her expression, and felt something in his chest loosen slightly. You're welcome. But Evelyn, this doesn't happen again. This was the exception. After this, I go back to being Sarah's dad and nothing more. I understand. She smiled. Though I suspect you're going to have trouble with the nothing more part. Turns out you're pretty good at impossible situations. Only because I've had too much practice. The launch proceeded on schedule. Crosstech's global rollout was flawless, their clients delighted, their press coverage glowing. Nobody except the 3 people in that conference room knew how close everything had come to catastrophic failure. Nobody knew about the digital war that had been fought and won in the space of 30 minutes. By 5 p.m., when Noah left Crosstech Tower, the crisis was over. The Covenant was destroyed. Crosstech was secure. And Sarah was waiting at the neighbor's house, completely unaware that her father had just burned down an intelligence network to protect her childhood. Noah picked her up, listened to her excited chatter about her day, and drove home feeling the weight of 2 lives pressing against each other, the one he'd left behind and the one he was trying to live. That evening, after Sarah was asleep, Noah sat in his kitchen and thought about what Evelyn had said, about punishing himself, about breaking Melissa's second promise, about being a ghost in his own life. Maybe she was right. Maybe he had been punishing himself for surviving. Maybe taking that custodial job hadn't been about protecting Sarah. It had been about penance. But today, destroying the Covenant, protecting his daughter by using the skills he'd tried to bury, that hadn't felt like penance. That had felt like purpose. His phone buzzed. Text from Evelyn. Thank you for everything, for saving the company, for showing me what matters, for being exactly who you are when we needed you most. Noah typed back. Thank you for giving me permission to fight back. I'd forgotten what that felt like. The response was immediate. Don't forget again, the world needs people like you. Noah smiled and set down his phone. Maybe Evelyn was right about that too. Maybe the world did need people willing to cross lines when everything else failed. Maybe his skills didn't have to be weapons he was ashamed of. Maybe they could be tools he used carefully, deliberately, only when absolutely necessary. But only if he could figure out how to balance that with being Sarah's father. Only if he could find a way to be both people without losing himself completely. He walked to Sarah's room, stood in her doorway watching her sleep, and made a new promise. Not to Melissa this time, but to himself. He would protect Sarah always, but he wouldn't hide from who he was anymore, wouldn't pretend his skills didn't exist, wouldn't punish himself for being good at necessary things. He would find balance, and if he couldn't find it, he would build it. Because Sarah deserved a father who was whole, not a father who was hiding. And maybe, just maybe, that meant accepting that Captain Noah Mercer and Noah the father weren't 2 different people. They were the same person, trying to do right in a complicated world. The next morning, Noah woke to find Sarah already dressed for school, sitting at the kitchen table with a serious expression. Dad, can we talk? Noah's heart rate spiked. Had she somehow found out? Had someone told her? Of course, what's wrong? Nothing's wrong exactly, but you've been different lately. Stressed, and I know your work has been complicated. She twisted her hands together nervously. I just want to make sure you're okay, that we're okay. Noah sat down across from her, feeling his throat tighten. We're more than okay, sweetheart. I promise. But you're worried about something. I can tell. I was worried, but it's handled now. And you know what I learned? What? That trying to protect you by hiding from who I am wasn't actually protecting you at all. It was just making me half present, and you deserve better than that. Sarah looked confused. I don't understand. You will someday. But for now, just know that I love you completely. And I'm going to be better at being here for you, really here. Not just physically, but all of me. Sarah smiled and hugged him. You're weird sometimes, Dad. Yeah, I really am. He dropped her at school, watched her disappear into the building, and felt something shift inside him. A decision crystallizing, a path forward becoming clear. He drove to Crosstech Tower one last time, rode the elevator to 73, and found Evelyn in her office. I'm done, he said without preamble. Her face fell. Noah, let me finish. I'm done consulting. I'm done being your security expert, but I'm not done being your friend. If you want to learn what actual strength looks like, if you want to figure out how to lead with dignity instead of fear, I'll help. Just not as an employee, as someone who gives a damn about who you become. Evelyn smiled, relief and something else crossing her face. I'd like that. Very much. Good. Because you still have a lot to learn, and I'm a terrible teacher unless you're actually willing to listen. I'm willing, more than willing. Noah extended his hand, Evelyn shook it, and in that moment something changed between them. Not romance, neither of them was ready for that, but partnership, friendship, the beginning of something neither had expected to find. Also, Noah added, Sarah's building a volcano for the science fair next month. She'd probably love it if a successful CEO came to see it explode. Wouldn't miss it for anything. Noah left Crosstech Tower feeling lighter than he had in years. The threat was neutralized. Sarah was safe. And for the first time since Melissa died, he wasn't running from his past or hiding from his present. He was just living. Finally, completely. The way she'd always wanted him to. And somewhere he hoped she knew. The weeks that followed felt like learning to breathe again after years of holding his breath. Noah returned to his simple rhythms. Mornings with Sarah, afternoons working odd consulting jobs he could do remotely, evenings helping with homework and listening to her endless ideas about volcanic eruptions and science fair presentations. But something fundamental had shifted. He wasn't hiding anymore. Wasn't apologizing for who he'd been or what he could do. He was just living, fully and without the weight of constant penance. Evelyn called twice a week, always in the evenings after Sarah was asleep. At first the conversations were brief, professional. Updates on Crosstech's security improvements, questions about protocol implementations. But gradually they evolved into something else. Discussions about leadership, about finding balance, about the loneliness that came with power and the courage required to let people see past the armor. I fired my entire executive team today, Evelyn said one night, 3 weeks after the Covenant incident. She sounded exhausted but strangely energized. Not because they were incompetent, but because I realized I'd built a team of people who were afraid to tell me the truth. People who said yes because disagreeing was dangerous. How'd they take it? Surprisingly well, actually. I think most of them were relieved. I gave them all generous severance packages and honest recommendations. Told them they deserved to work for someone who valued their judgment instead of their obedience. Noah smiled. That's growth. It's terrifying. I have no idea how to rebuild the leadership team. I've spent 20 years surrounding myself with people who reflected what I wanted to see rather than challenging me to be better. Then build differently this time. Hire people who scare you a little, people who have the courage to tell you when you're wrong. Like you do? Like I did. Past tense. I'm not coming back, Evelyn. We talked about this. I know, but you could consult occasionally. Help me interview candidates. Make sure I'm not falling back into old patterns. Noah considered it. Part of him wanted to refuse on principle, to maintain the boundaries he'd worked so hard to establish. But another part, the part that was slowly learning that helping didn't mean sacrificing, recognized that Evelyn was genuinely trying to change, and maybe that was worth supporting. 1 interview per candidate. I ask questions, you listen to how they respond, then you make your own decision. Deal? Deal. Thank you, Noah. Don't thank me yet. I'm a terrible interviewer. I tend to make people uncomfortable. Good. Comfortable people don't tell hard truths. Sarah's science fair was scheduled for a Friday evening in late November. She'd been working on her volcano project for 3 weeks, constructing an elaborate papier-mâché mountain with a hidden chamber for the chemical reaction. Noah had helped her mix the baking soda and vinegar properly, explaining the chemistry in terms she could understand. She'd absorbed everything with the fierce concentration she inherited from Melissa, asking questions that got progressively more complex until Noah had to look up answers himself. The night before the fair, as they were putting final touches on the volcano's paint job, Sarah said, "Is Ms. Cross really coming tomorrow?" She said she would. Why? I don't know. She's really important, right? Like, runs a giant company important. Why would she care about a kid's science fair? Noah set down his paintbrush and looked at his daughter. Because she's learning that importance isn't about how big your company is or how much money you make. It's about showing up for the people who matter. And you matter to me, which means you matter to her. That doesn't make sense. It will someday. But for now, just know that the people who are worth knowing are the ones who understand that showing up is what counts. Sarah nodded, still looking skeptical, and returned to carefully painting moss-colored details on her volcano's slopes. The science fair was held in the school gymnasium, transformed into a maze of display tables and poster boards. Sarah's volcano occupied a corner spot, her presentation board carefully documenting the chemical reaction process with hand-drawn diagrams and typed explanations. She'd titled the project How Mountains Explode and included a section on real volcanic activity that Noah suspected was beyond 4th grade requirements, but that she'd insisted on including anyway. Noah arrived early, helped Sarah set up, and stood back to let her practice her presentation. She was nervous, fidgeting with her hair, but when she started explaining the science, her voice grew steady and confident. Just like her mother, Noah thought. Melissa had been like that too, uncertain until she found her footing, then unstoppable. Evelyn arrived at 6:30, precisely on time, dressed in jeans and a simple sweater that made her look younger and more approachable than the corporate armor she usually wore. She carried a small gift bag and wore an expression that was equal parts curious and nervous. "Noah, thank you for inviting me." She looked around at the gymnasium full of children and parents and science projects. "I haven't been to one of these since I was Sarah's age." "Did you do a science fair project?" "Solar system model, completely unremarkable. My parents didn't come." She said it matter-of-factly, but Noah heard the old wound underneath. "Well, you're here now for Sarah. That matters." Sarah spotted Evelyn and waved enthusiastically. Evelyn walked over, set down the gift bag, and listened with genuine attention as Sarah launched into her presentation about volcanic reactions and tectonic pressure. When Sarah finished, Evelyn asked questions, good questions, the kind that showed she'd actually been listening rather than just being polite. "So the baking soda acts as the base, and the vinegar is the acid, and when they combine, they create carbon dioxide gas that expands rapidly and forces the liquid up through the chamber?" Evelyn clarified. "Exactly. And the pressure builds until it has to release, just like real magma pushing through the Earth's crust." Sarah's face was glowing with pride. "Do you want to see it erupt?" "I absolutely do." Sarah carefully measured out the baking soda, added red food coloring to the vinegar for visual effect, and triggered the eruption. The volcano foamed dramatically, red lava, cascading down the painted slopes while Sarah narrated the chemical process. Other parents and students stopped to watch, drawn by the spectacle. When it was over, Sarah beamed at the small crowd that had gathered. Evelyn applauded, genuinely delighted, and several other parents joined in. "That was incredible," Evelyn said. "You're a natural scientist, Sarah." "My dad helped with the chemistry part, but the design was all mine." "The best projects are collaborations. Your dad is lucky to have such a talented partner." Sarah looked up at Noah with an expression that held such pure joy it made his chest ache. This was what Melissa had wanted for her, these moments, this normalcy, this childhood full of science fairs and proud parents, and the simple validation of work well done. After the judges made their rounds, Sarah won second place in the chemistry category, which made her absolutely ecstatic. They walked out to the parking lot together. Evelyn handed Sarah the gift bag she'd brought. "This is for you, for being brave enough to make things explode in front of people." Sarah opened the bag and pulled out a book. Women in Science, 50 Fearless Pioneers Who Changed the World. Miss Cross, this is amazing. Thank you. You're welcome. And Sarah, your dad told me you asked why I'd come to a kids' science fair when I run a big company. The answer is that running a company doesn't mean anything if you forget why you're doing it. You reminded me tonight that the important things are the small things, so thank you for that. Sarah hugged her impulsively. Evelyn froze for a moment, clearly unprepared, then hugged back with the awkwardness of someone who didn't receive affection often. When Sarah ran ahead to the car, still chattering about her second-place ribbon, Evelyn turned to Noah. She's remarkable. You're doing an incredible job with her. I'm trying. Some days are better than others. The fact that you keep trying is what matters. Evelyn hesitated, then said, I need to tell you something about my father. Noah's attention sharpened. Your father? Richard Cross. He's the one who actually founded CrossTech, though the public narrative is that I built it from nothing. He gave me seed money 20 years ago, installed me as CEO, and has been the silent majority shareholder ever since, pulling strings, making demands, using the company as his personal kingdom. Why are you telling me this now? Because after what happened with the Covenant, after you showed me what it means to actually fight for something, I started digging into my father's business dealings. And I found things, Noah. Bad things. Illegal things. He's been using CrossTech as a front for money laundering, using our international contracts to move assets for people who shouldn't have assets to move. I've been so focused on running the company that I never looked closely at where the money was actually coming from. Noah felt ice water spread through his chest. Evelyn, if your father is connected to the kind of people I think he's connected to, he is. I have proof. Bank records, emails, contracts with shell corporations. It's all there. And when I confronted him about it 3 days ago, when I told him I was taking the company fully independent and cutting his influence completely, he threatened me. What kind of threat? The kind that involves making sure I lose everything. The company, my reputation, possibly my freedom if he decides to frame me for his crimes. Her voice was steady, but her hands were shaking. He said if I don't back down, if I don't give him what he wants, he'll destroy CrossTech and make sure I go down with it. And Noah, I think he means it. I think my father is genuinely willing to burn everything rather than lose control. Noah was quiet for a long moment, watching Sarah in the car, practicing her presentation for an audience of stuffed animals in the back seat. Then he said, What do you want to do? I want to fight him. I want to expose what he's done and take control of my own company. But I don't know how without destroying everything in the process. And I'm terrified that if I fight, he'll come after you and Sarah to get to me. He won't, because I won't let him. Noah met her eyes. But Evelyn, if you're going to fight this, you need to understand what you're walking into. Your father isn't some distant threat we can neutralize with clever tactics. He's family. Taking him down means destroying that relationship permanently, accepting that you might lose everything anyway. Are you ready for that? I don't know, but I know I can't keep living like this. Can't keep pretending I built something legitimate when it's all been contaminated from the beginning. I need to clean this up, even if it costs me everything. Then we'll help you, but carefully, methodically, the way it should be done. We? You think I'm letting you face this alone after you stood by me against the Covenant? Not a chance. Besides, I'm apparently terrible at staying retired. Noah smiled slightly. But this time, we do it right. We gather evidence, we build an airtight case, and we make sure that when your father falls, he falls alone. You and CrossTech stay clean. Evelyn's eyes filled with tears. Why? Why would you risk this for me? Because you asked. Because it matters. Because someone once told me that the world needs people who are willing to fight when everything else fails. And right now you need someone willing to fight with you. She hugged him then, surprising both of them. Noah stiffened for a moment, then relaxed into it. It had been 4 years since Melissa died. 4 years since he'd allowed himself any connection beyond Sarah that mattered enough to be dangerous. But standing in that parking lot, holding a woman who was trying desperately to become better than her circumstances allowed, Noah felt something he'd thought was dead forever. Hope. That maybe life didn't end with loss. That maybe opening yourself to people again wasn't betrayal. It was survival. They spent the next 3 weeks building the case against Richard Cross. Noah worked remotely, using skills he'd promised himself he wouldn't use again, tracing money through offshore accounts and shell corporations. Evelyn gathered internal documents, emails, contracts that proved her father had been systematically using Crosstech for illegal operations. Marcus coordinated with lawyers who specialized in corporate crime, preparing the legal framework for a complete separation. It was meticulous, exhausting work. Noah did most of it late at night, after Sarah was asleep, compartmentalizing the way he'd learned in the service. During the day, he was present for his daughter, helping with homework, making dinner, being the steady parent she needed. At night, he was something else entirely, tracking financial crimes across international borders with the cold precision that had made him valuable in his previous life. Sarah knew something was happening, but didn't ask questions. She'd learned years ago that sometimes her father needed space, that sometimes his work required focus she didn't fully understand. But she also knew he'd never let it interfere with what mattered. So she trusted him, the way children trust when they've never been given reason not to. 3 weeks into the investigation, Richard Cross made his move. Noah received a call at 2 a.m. from Evelyn, her voice tight with controlled panic. "My father just filed a lawsuit claiming I've been embezzling company funds. He's using the same evidence we found about his money laundering, but he's twisted it to make it look like I'm the guilty party. Every transaction, every shell company, every illegal contract, he's attributed it all to me." Noah sat up in bed, immediately alert. "Where are you?" "Home. My lawyers say I shouldn't go to the office, that if I do, security might detain me under his orders. He's frozen my corporate accounts, revoked my access credentials, and called an emergency board meeting to vote on removing me as CEO. "When's the meeting?" "Tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. If the board votes against me, I lose everything, and based on the evidence he's presenting, they probably will." "No, they won't, because we're going to give them the real evidence first. The complete picture. Everything your father's done, with timestamps and documentation that proves you couldn't have been involved because you were building the legitimate parts of the company while he was running his criminal empire underneath." "Noah, we're not ready. The case isn't complete. It doesn't need to be complete. It needs to be convincing. And what we have is more than enough to prove your father is lying." Noah was already getting dressed, moving quietly to avoid waking Sarah. "I'm calling Marcus. We're going to spend tonight preparing a presentation that destroys your father's narrative completely. And tomorrow morning, you're going to walk into that board meeting and take your company back." "What if it doesn't work?" "Then we go to plan B. But Evelyn, you've spent 3 weeks gathering evidence because you wanted to do this right. Because you wanted to prove you're better than the fear he's used to control you. Don't let him take that away now. Don't let him win by making you too afraid to fight." She was quiet for a moment, then, Okay, you're right. What do you need from me?" "Every piece of evidence we've gathered, every document, every email, every transaction record, send it all to Marcus and me right now. We'll organize it, verify it, and build a presentation that makes your father's lies impossible to defend." "Thank you for everything, for not letting me face this alone. Partners don't let partners fight alone. That was the deal, remember?" Noah hung up, called Marcus, and spent the next 8 hours building the most comprehensive corporate crime presentation he'd ever assembled. They worked in perfect coordination, Noah handling the financial forensics, Marcus managing the document organization, both of them driven by the knowledge that Evelyn's entire life depended on getting this right. By 8 a.m., they had it. A complete timeline of Richard Cross's criminal activities, documented with bank records, emails, and third-party verification. Every transaction tied to specific dates when Evelyn had been in different cities, running legitimate operations, building the actual company. Every shell corporation traced back to accounts her father controlled exclusively. Every piece of evidence organized to tell one undeniable story. Richard Cross had built a criminal empire inside his daughter's company, and when she'd discovered it, he'd tried to frame her rather than face consequences. Noah picked up Sarah, got her to school, and met Evelyn outside Crosstech Tower at 9:30. She looked exhausted, terrified, but determined. Marcus stood beside her, tablet loaded with their presentation. "Ready?" Noah asked. "No, but I'm doing it anyway." They rode the elevator to the boardroom on the 75th floor. Richard Cross was already there, sitting at the head of the table, surrounded by lawyers and board members. He was in his early 70s, silver-haired and distinguished, with the kind of face that inspired trust and concealed cruelty. When Evelyn walked in, his expression shifted to something between contempt and satisfaction. Evelyn, how brave of you to show up. I wasn't sure you would, given the circumstances. Given that you're framing me for your crimes? Yes, Father, I'm here, and I'm going to make sure everyone in this room knows exactly what you've done. Richard smiled coldly. The board has already reviewed my evidence. They know what you've done. This meeting is a formality before we vote on your removal. Then they haven't seen all the evidence. Evelyn nodded to Marcus, who connected his tablet to the room's display system. Because what you presented was a carefully curated selection designed to make me look guilty. What we're about to show you is the complete picture. For the next 45 minutes, Marcus and Noah walked the board through everything. Every transaction, every shell company, every email Richard had sent coordinating illegal operations, the timeline that proved Evelyn had been running legitimate operations while her father ran his criminal enterprise, the documentation showing that Richard Cross had exclusive control over the accounts in question. The evidence that was so overwhelming, so meticulously documented, that denial became impossible. Richard's face went from confident to angry to pale as the presentation continued. His lawyers tried to interrupt, to object, to deflect, but the evidence was airtight, undeniable, devastating. When they finished, the boardroom was silent. Then the chairman spoke. Richard, do you have any response to this evidence? It's fabricated. My daughter has spent weeks building a false narrative to deflect from her own guilt. These are bank records from 3 different countries, Noah said quietly, verified by independent auditors. Email metadata confirming you sent them from your personal accounts. Transaction logs that match SEC filings cross-referenced with international wire transfers. Nothing about this is fabricated, Mr. Cross. This is documentation of systematic criminal activity spanning 2 decades. Richard stood abruptly. I built this company. I gave Evelyn everything she has. Without me, Crosstech would be nothing. And this is how she repays me? By conspiring with... He looked at Noah with undisguised contempt. With some ex-military janitor to destroy me? No, Evelyn said, her voice steady. I'm repaying you by refusing to let you destroy what I actually built. You gave me seed money 20 years ago. But every legitimate success, every real innovation, every employee who believes in this company, that's mine. I built that. And I'm not going to let you burn it down because you can't accept that I'm finally standing up to you. You ungrateful. Enough. The chairman cut him off. Richard, based on this evidence, the board has no choice but to remove you from all positions within Crosstech effective immediately. We'll be cooperating fully with law enforcement on the criminal investigation. Your shares will be held in trust pending the outcome of legal proceedings. And Richard, don't attempt to return to this building. Security has been notified. Richard looked around the room, searching for allies, finding none. Then his eyes landed on Evelyn with such hatred that Noah instinctively moved closer to her. You've destroyed your own family, Richard said quietly. I hope you can live with that. I can, Evelyn said, because family shouldn't mean protecting criminals. It should mean holding each other accountable for being better. You taught me that by showing me exactly what not to be. Richard left, followed by his lawyers, his presence in the room evaporating like smoke. The board spent another hour discussing next steps, voting unanimously to retain Evelyn as CEO and begin the process of complete separation from Richard's influence. When it was finally over, when the board had dispersed and the room was empty except for Noah, Marcus, and Evelyn, she sat down heavily in a chair and started crying. Not sad tears. Exhausted, relieved, overwhelming tears of someone who'd been carrying impossible weight and finally set it down. Noah sat beside her, said nothing, just let her process. After a few minutes, she wiped her eyes and said, I just destroyed my father. No. You exposed what he'd already done to himself. There's a difference. Is there? Because it feels like I just burned down my entire family to save a company. You saved yourself, Marcus said quietly. You saved 47,000 employees. You saved the legitimate work we've all been doing. That matters more than protecting someone who would have destroyed you without hesitation. Evelyn nodded slowly, processing. Then she looked at Noah. What happens now? Now you rebuild. You find board members who actually care about the company rather than their own power. You hire executives who challenge you instead of enabling you. You build Crosstech into what you always claimed it was, a company that does good work for good reasons. And you do it without your father's money, his influence, or his approval. I don't know if I can. You can. Because you just did the hardest thing you'll ever have to do. Everything after this is easier. She smiled weakly. Is that supposed to be comforting? It's supposed to be true. Over the next 3 months, Evelyn rebuilt Crosstech's leadership team from scratch. She hired a new COO who'd built ethical tech companies in 3 countries. She brought in a CFO who specialized in corporate transparency. She assembled a board that included academics, nonprofit leaders, and former government regulators who actually understood ethics, weren't just public relations. Noah helped with the interviews, asking uncomfortable questions and watching how candidates responded under pressure. He never joined the company officially, never took a title or a salary beyond occasional consulting fees. But he was present enough to make sure Evelyn stayed true to the person she was trying to become. Sarah's science fair volcano evolved into a passion for chemistry that carried her through the rest of 4th grade and into 5th. She started talking about maybe becoming a scientist someday, or an engineer, or possibly a teacher who taught other kids how to make things explode safely. Noah encouraged all of it, remembering Melissa's own love of learning, seeing pieces of her in their daughter's curiosity. Evelyn came to dinner once a month, always bringing books for Sarah and staying to help with dishes after. She and Noah fell into an easy friendship that surprised both of them, built on mutual respect, shared battles, and the comfort of being around someone who'd seen you at your worst and stayed anyway. They never discussed whether it might become something more. The possibility hung in the air sometimes, acknowledged in glances that lasted too long or conversations that went deeper than necessary. But neither pushed it. Both understood that whatever they were building needed time to develop naturally, without the pressure of expectation or the shadow of past grief. Richard Cross went to trial 8 months after his exposure. The evidence was overwhelming. He was convicted on 12 counts of money laundering, fraud, and racketeering, sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. Evelyn attended the sentencing but didn't speak to her father. She watched him be led away in handcuffs, felt nothing but sad relief, and walked out of the courthouse into sunshine that felt like permission to finally move forward. A year after the science fair, after the Covenant was destroyed and Richard Cross was in prison and Crosstech had been completely rebuilt, Noah sat in his kitchen on a Saturday morning watching Sarah practice a presentation for her 5th grade career day. She decided to talk about her father's work, not the military part she didn't know about, but the consulting work he did helping companies solve complex problems. And my dad says the most important thing about solving problems isn't being the smartest person in the room, Sarah read from her notes. It's being brave enough to ask for help when you need it, and being willing to help others when they need you, because nobody does important things alone. Noah felt his throat tighten. That's good, sweetheart. Really good. You think so? It's not too boring? It's perfect. Your classmates are lucky to hear it. Sarah beamed, set down her notes, and said, Dad, can I ask you something? Always. Do you like Miss Cross? Like her? Noah almost choked on his coffee. What makes you ask that? I don't know. You smile different when she's around, and she smiles different too. Like you're both happy but trying to hide it because you think I'll be weird about it. And would you be? Weird about it, I mean? Sarah considered this seriously. I don't think so. She's nice. She remembers things I tell her, and she makes you laugh, which you didn't do very much before. So if you like her, that would be okay with me. I just wanted you to know that. Noah looked at his daughter, 10 years old now, perceptive and kind, and somehow wise beyond her years, and felt gratitude so overwhelming it was almost painful. Thank you for saying that. I don't know what's going to happen with Ms. Cross, but I appreciate you giving me permission to figure it out. You don't need my permission, Dad, but I thought it might help to know I wouldn't be mad. She hugged him and went back to practicing her presentation, leaving Noah sitting in his kitchen processing the fact that his 10-year-old daughter had just given him relationship advice. That evening, after Sarah was asleep, Noah called Evelyn. Can you meet me tomorrow? There's something I want to talk about. That sounds ominous. Should I be worried? No, but it's important. Luna Park at noon by the carousel? I'll be there. They met the next day in the weak December sunlight, the park mostly empty except for joggers and a few families with young children. The carousel was still, waiting for spring crowds. Noah bought them both coffee from a cart, and they walked in comfortable silence for a few minutes. "Sarah gave me permission to date you yesterday," Noah said finally, which was both mortifying and apparently necessary because I'm apparently terrible at hiding how I feel. Evelyn stopped walking. "And how do you feel?" "Terrified. Guilty. Like moving forward means betraying Melissa. Like opening myself to caring about someone again means risking the kind of loss I barely survived the first time." He met her eyes. "But also hopeful. Alive in ways I haven't been in years. Grateful that you crashed into my life and forced me to remember that hiding isn't the same as healing." "Noah, let me finish. I don't know what this is between us. I don't know if it's friendship or something more or just two people who've been through battles together and are still figuring out what peace looks like. But I know I care about you. I know Sarah cares about you. And I know that Melissa would want me to be happy again, even if figuring out how to be happy feels impossible most days." Evelyn was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "I care about you too. About both of you. You changed my entire life, Noah. You showed me that everything I thought mattered was hollow. That real strength is presence and real power is choosing vulnerability. I'm a different person because of you. A better person, I hope." "You are. Demonstrably better. But I'm also terrified. I've spent my entire adult life avoiding real connection because connection meant losing control. And with you, I can't maintain that distance. You see through every defense I've built. You call me on every excuse I make. Being around you means being exposed in ways I've never allowed. And that's terrifying. So we're both terrified. Good foundation for a relationship." She laughed despite herself. "Is that what we're calling this? A relationship? I don't know what else to call two people who are clearly moving toward something but too scared to name it. How about we call it an experiment? We try spending time together intentionally instead of just defaulting to friendship. We see if what we feel is real or just trauma bonding. We go slowly, and we're honest with each other and with Sarah. And if it doesn't work, we stay friends because that matters more than forcing something that isn't ready." "An experiment. I can work with that." Noah extended his hand. "Partners in this too?" Evelyn shook it, then pulled him into a hug that felt different from the ones before. More intentional, more possibility than gratitude. When she pulled back, she was smiling in the way Sarah had described, trying to hide happiness and failing completely. "Just so you know," she said, "I'm probably going to be terrible at this. I don't know how to date like a normal person. I don't know how to not turn everything into a negotiation or a strategy. Then it's a good thing I'm not normal either. We'll figure it out together, slowly, with lots of mistakes and probably some spectacularly awkward moments. Sounds perfect." They walked back through the park, hand in hand, neither commenting on the shift, but both feeling it. Something fragile and new and worth protecting. The months that followed weren't fairy tale perfect. They were messy and complicated and full of moments when both Noah and Evelyn had to consciously choose vulnerability over self-protection. There were dinners that ended in arguments about boundaries. Movie nights where Sarah watched with bemused tolerance as two adults tried to figure out how to sit next to each other on a couch without overthinking it. Conversations at midnight where old grief surfaced and had to be acknowledged before they could move forward. But there were also moments of unexpected joy. Evelyn helping Sarah build an even more elaborate volcano for the 6th grade science fair. Noah teaching Evelyn basic self-defense because she'd admitted she'd never felt physically safe in her own strength. The three of them taking a weekend trip to the coast where Sarah collected shells and Noah and Evelyn walked on the beach talking about nothing important and everything that mattered. 2 years after the science fair, Crosstech launched a new initiative focused on developing technology for nonprofit organizations at cost. Evelyn announced it at a press conference, explaining that the company she'd fought to save would now focus on doing work that actually improved lives rather than just generating profit. The business press called it naive. Her board called it visionary. The employees called it exactly what they'd been hoping for. Noah watched the press conference from home with Sarah, who'd grown into a thoughtful 12-year-old with her mother's intelligence and her father's quiet strength. "You're proud of her, aren't you?" Sarah said. very proud. She's become exactly who she was supposed to be. Because you helped her. Because she chose to. I just gave her permission to be brave. Sarah leaned against him, the way she used to when she was small. Mom would have liked her, I think. Miss Cross, I mean. She would have liked seeing you happy again. Noah felt tears burn behind his eyes. Yeah, I think she would have. 3 years after the science fair, Noah and Evelyn got married in a small ceremony at the courthouse with Sarah as the only witness. No grand celebration, no corporate event, just the three of them signing papers and making promises about showing up, about being honest, about building something together that honored who they'd been while allowing them to become who they wanted to be. Sarah wore a new dress Evelyn had helped her pick out. Noah wore the suit he'd gotten married in the first time because Melissa would have wanted him to carry that forward rather than leaving it buried in the back of his closet. Evelyn wore something simple and beautiful and completely unlike the corporate armor she'd lived in for so long. Afterward, they went to Sarah's favorite restaurant, the taco place Noah had taken her to after her very first concert performance 4 years earlier. They ate too much, laughed at Sarah's increasingly elaborate jokes, and felt the weight of hard-won peace settling over all of them. That night, after Sarah had gone to bed, Noah and Evelyn sat on the apartment balcony watching the city lights. Noah's apartment, their apartment now, since Evelyn had moved in 3 months earlier, choosing the small space over her penthouse because it felt more like home. Do you ever regret it? Evelyn asked. Letting me crash into your life? Taking on my disasters? Fighting battles that weren't yours? Every day, Noah said, deadpan. She shoved him lightly. Be serious. I am being serious. I regret it every day because it completely destroyed the safe, controlled existence I'd built. It forced me to stop hiding. It made me remember that I'm capable of more than just surviving. It gave me back pieces of myself I thought were gone forever. He took her hand. So yes, I regret it. In the best possible way. I love you, Evelyn said. Not a question or a negotiation, just truth. I love you too, both of you. This whole complicated, messy, impossible family we've accidentally built. Not so impossible if we're actually here, actually making it work. No, Noah agreed. Not impossible at all. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the city, and Noah thought about the journey that had brought him here. From the glass tower where he'd been humiliated by a woman who didn't know his worth, to destroying an intelligence network to protect his daughter, to fighting beside someone brave enough to dismantle her own father's empire, to this moment, sitting on a balcony with his wife and his daughter sleeping safely inside. All of it connected, all of it necessary. 5 years after the science fair, Sarah graduated from high school with honors and a full scholarship to study engineering at MIT. She'd grown into someone remarkable, confident but humble, brilliant but kind, driven by the same curiosity that had made her build that first volcano with such care. At her graduation party, she gave a speech that made Noah cry in front of 50 people. My dad taught me that strength isn't about being the toughest or the smartest. It's about showing up when things are hard. It's about helping people even when it costs you something. It's about choosing to be present instead of powerful. And my mom, she smiled at Evelyn, who'd officially adopted her 2 years earlier, taught me that it's never too late to become who you're supposed to be. That growing means admitting when you're wrong and changing anyway. That real leadership is lifting other people up instead of climbing over them. She looked directly at Noah and Evelyn. You both showed me that family isn't about blood or biology. It's about who shows up, who stays, who fights for you when you can't fight for yourself. Thank you for being my family. Thank you for showing me what that actually means. The applause was thunderous. Noah and Evelyn stood together, watching their daughter receive congratulations from friends and teachers, and felt the profound satisfaction of knowing they'd done something right. They'd taken broken pieces, grief and cruelty and fear, and built something whole, something that mattered. 10 years after the science fair, Crosstech had become one of the most respected technology companies in the world, not for profit margins or market dominance, but for genuine innovation that improved lives. They'd developed affordable medical technology for underserved communities. They'd built educational platforms that reached students in countries without traditional infrastructure. They'd proven that a company could be both successful and ethical, that growth didn't require sacrificing values. Evelyn stepped down as CEO that year, choosing to focus on Crosstech's nonprofit division. She'd learned that impact mattered more than empire, that influence wasn't about control. It was about enabling others to do work that mattered. The board named her chairman emeritus and threw a celebration that she tried to avoid and eventually had to attend because Noah convinced her that accepting recognition wasn't the same as seeking validation. At the celebration, Marcus, now CEO himself, gave a speech about transformation, about how Evelyn had rebuilt not just a company, but an entire philosophy of leadership, about how her willingness to admit mistakes and change had inspired an entire generation of entrepreneurs to do the same. But the speech Noah remembered most was Evelyn's own, short, unscripted, delivered with the quiet confidence of someone who'd fought every demon and survived. 20 years ago, I thought success meant power. 10 years ago, I learned it meant showing up. Today, I know it means creating space for others to become who they're meant to be. Thank you to everyone who believed in this company. Thank you to the people who challenged me when I needed it. And thank you to my family. She looked at Noah and Sarah, both sitting in the front row, for teaching me that the strongest thing you can be is vulnerable enough to love completely. The standing ovation lasted 3 minutes. 15 years after the science fair, Noah published a book about crisis management and ethical leadership. He hadn't planned to write it. Writing felt too exposed, too public. But Sarah had encouraged him, and Evelyn had helped him organize the stories, and eventually he'd realized that maybe sharing what he'd learned could help others navigate their own impossible situations. The book became a quiet bestseller, not because of marketing, but because of substance. People recognized truth when they read it, recognized the voice of someone who'd actually lived through crises rather than just consulting on them. Noah gave exactly 3 interviews, all of which made him uncomfortable, then retreated back to the life he preferred, teaching occasionally, consulting rarely, and mostly just being present for the people he loved. 20 years after the science fair, Sarah defended her doctoral dissertation in renewable energy engineering. Noah and Evelyn sat in the audience, holding hands, watching their daughter present research that would eventually contribute to making clean energy accessible in developing countries. She'd become exactly who she was supposed to be. Not because they'd pushed her toward any particular path, but because they'd given her space to discover what mattered to her. After the defense, after Sarah had been congratulated by her committee and celebrated by her colleagues, the 3 of them went to dinner at that same taco place they'd gone to after the courthouse wedding. It had become tradition over the years, the place they went to mark important moments, the place that reminded them that important things didn't require grandeur, just presence. "Remember when I made that first volcano?" Sarah asked, laughing. "I thought that was the biggest thing I'd ever do." "It was the biggest thing you'd done at the time," Noah said. "That's how growth works. Each step seems impossible until you take it." "You know what's funny?" Sarah looked between them. "I don't really remember Mom. My birth mom. I was too young when she died, but I remember the stories you told me about her dad, and I remember you, Mom, learning how to be a mother when you'd never planned to be one. And somehow, between the 2 of you, I got exactly what I needed." Evelyn's eyes filled with tears. "That's the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me." "It's true. You both taught me different things. Dad taught me to be steady, to show up even when it's hard, to choose people over power. And Mom, you taught me to be brave, to challenge systems that are wrong, to build things that matter. I'm who I am because of both of you." They sat in that restaurant, 3 people who'd found each other through crisis and built a family through choice, and felt the profound gift of time, of showing up consistently, of choosing love even when it was complicated and scary and required constant work. Noah looked at Evelyn and saw the woman who'd humiliated him in a glass tower 20 years ago, who'd since become his partner, his wife, his best friend. He looked at Sarah and saw Melissa's intelligence and kindness refracted through experiences that had shaped her into someone entirely her own. And he felt, for the first time since Melissa died, complete peace with the path his life had taken. It hadn't been the path he'd expected. It hadn't been the path he'd chosen. But it had been the path he'd walked, step by impossible step, learning that strength wasn't avoiding pain. It was surviving it, and choosing to stay open anyway. "Thank you," Noah said quietly, to both of them, to the moment, to the universe that had somehow given him a second chance at happiness. For what? Sarah asked. For showing me that life doesn't end with loss. It just changes shape. And if you're brave enough to let it, it can change into something beautiful. Evelyn squeezed his hand. Sarah smiled. And in that small restaurant with its plastic chairs and its good tacos and its history of marking their important moments, they sat together and simply were. Present, grateful, alive. Years later, when people asked Noah about the night in the glass tower, about how he'd gone from invisible janitor to corporate security consultant to author and occasional teacher, he always gave the same answer. I stopped hiding. I stopped punishing myself for surviving. And I started showing up for the people who mattered. Everything else followed from that. And when they asked about Evelyn, about how a ruthless CEO had transformed into one of the most respected ethical leaders in technology, she always said, "Someone showed me that cruelty isn't strength, that real power is choosing to be present instead of dominant. And once you learn that lesson, you can't unlearn it. You can only try to live it every day." They were both right, and they were both proof that redemption isn't a moment, it's a practice, a daily choice to be better than your worst instincts, to show up for people even when it costs you something, to build families and companies and lives based on values instead of fear. The glass tower still stood, of course. Crosstech still operated on the 73rd floor, though with completely different leadership and purpose. Sometimes Noah walked past it, remembered the man he'd been then, invisible, diminished, hiding from his own capabilities, and felt gratitude for the woman who'd accidentally set him free by trying to humiliate him. Because without that moment, without that public cruelty, he never would have walked away, never would have come back, never would have fought battles that reminded him who he actually was beneath the grief and the penance and the fear. Sometimes the path to healing starts with being shattered. Sometimes you have to be broken before you can choose to rebuild yourself differently. Sometimes the worst moment becomes the catalyst for everything that matters. Noah understood that now, in ways he couldn't have 20 years ago in that glass tower. And standing on the sidewalk, looking up at the building where his life had changed, he felt nothing but peace with every impossible step that had brought him here. Sarah had her own life now. Evelyn had her legacy. And Noah had learned the hardest lesson of all, that surviving wasn't enough, that honoring Melissa's memory meant actually living, not just existing in the shadow of loss. He walked away from the tower for the last time, heading home to the family he'd built from crisis and choice and constant showing up. And as he walked, Noah smiled, remembering words Melissa had said to him in those final weeks. Don't just survive for Sarah, live for her. Show her what it looks like to choose joy even after terrible loss. That's the gift I want you to give her. It had taken him 4 years to understand what she meant, 20 more to actually do it. But here, now, walking through the city with his wife waiting at home and his daughter changing the world, Noah finally understood. The strongest thing you can be isn't invulnerable. It's present. It's vulnerable enough to let people matter. It's brave enough to keep showing up even when everything hurts. And it's wise enough to know that power isn't about domination. It's about choosing to be exactly who you are when the people you love need you most. That was the lesson. That was the gift. That was what made the journey from that glass tower to this moment worth every impossible step. And Noah Mercer, former captain, former janitor, husband and father and teacher of hard-won truths, carried that lesson home with him into the life he'd finally learned to live completely.